Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast, bringing back the Red Zone. We're going beyond the Red Zone. Usually we did this on Wednesday or Monday. I said, F it, we're going to do it on Tuesday because I think this is an interesting topic. And wouldn't you rather have this discussed with two dudes that call themselves leftists than have some blowhard racist dude talk crap, yell at you about having a take and not sucking, telling you to call but the phone lines are just backed up? Oh, we're going to tell you to call. Phone lines shouldn't be backed up. I don't know. It'll be just me working the phones. MT is taking the week off. Pascal, as you guys know, does not do the red zone. But I will be joined by the one and only Mac. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell because you never know what we're doing when we're doing it. So be notified. Also, big thank you to all the patrons, all the YouTube and Twitch subscribers, all the people that subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and wherever else you find this show. Thank you so much. You are the gasoline in the TIR machine that keeps it going. If you would like to get access to champagne rooms past and present, if you'd like to be in the live audience for the Pascal Robert Mau Mau Hour, if you want to join us for movie night, and we're doing a movie night this week. I watched it recently. I think I talked a little bit about it the other day on the show. For those of you that watch the show all the time, and did watch Fear of a Black Hat. It was big. It was a toss-up. I kind of wanted to watch Death Wish too because I just want you guys to see Larry Fishburne and the way he dies in that movie. It is just so offensive. Oh, but to me, there is nothing more accurate for the state of contemporary hip hop and sadly, maybe culture in general than this movie from the mid 90s in Fear of a Black Hat. If you've seen it, then you know hilarity will ensue. It's most of the jokes, I would say 90% of the jokes still hold up. I actually like Fear of a Black Hat better than CB4, but we'll be watching that for movie night tonight. Not tonight, I'm sorry, Friday night. So if you want access to all that, there's only one way to become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. And Patreon is letting us do a free trial offer. So if you want to try it out, see if it's even worth your time, you can. Now that that's out of the way, let me bring in my sports co-host, my homie, my dog. You may remember him from our War Crimes in Afghanistan show. You may also know him from his very successful iHeartRadio podcast. I know him because he knows more about sports than anyone else I know. And I love his perspective. I'm so excited to do this show with you guys tonight, and open up the phone lines because I think this is a topic that people will have something to say. I know JB is going to have something to say. I know Dr. Claw is going to have something to say. And even if you're not a sports fan, this pertains to you. We're going to be talking about Monopoly. And I don't think, most people, when we talk about these things, I don't know if they're talking about it from this angle. So let's bring in Mac.
What's up, man?
Dude? How are you?
Oh man, I'm good, man. My daughter, like 3 minutes before I was leaving her mom's house, was like, "Dad, I need some money." And I was like, "I've been here for how many hours?
Mm-hmm.
How many?
Mm-hmm.
And now you want to wait when I got something to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Well, she's 14, so naturally it's like Well, it's not my problem, is it? I just need money.
Yeah, no, that's what they do. They put you on the spot.
Yeah. So
You have
I
to
just
wait till they get older and put them on the spot. You know, if you look at parenting as a game of revenge, right now you are in the prime position for revenge because this is the age where they like to sleep in and stuff like that. So for me, this was a magical time. I was like, I'm never going to sleep in again when I took my daughter home from the hospital August 28th of the year of our Lord, 1998. She will be 25 this year. And I love waking my kids up. I love waking them up. Dad,
dude.
I love it. F you. Payback's a bitch.
Dude, it's just I was like, you know what? I'm not getting you cash today.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some money through Apple Pay because we got her a phone finally.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, but Dad, I need the cash so I can like pay my friend who bought me this thing. And I was like, oh man, guess what? Not my problem. Figure it out. I gotta go.
Yeah, tell you and that
You know?
goofy fucker to get some fucking peer-to-peer payment like the rest of the goddamn bougie kids on this block. Now get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, you know. I was like, come on, man. So like that was fun. And then, you know, it's been a rough week work-wise just because like I'm pulling doubles trying to make a couple extra dollars because you know Christmas. I granted it's just April or
Look,
August now.
Mac, we have to
Christmas
have
right there.
We have to have the illusion that we all have podcast riches. So you can't let anyone know that you have a normie job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, since I've already torn that kind of layer away, I want you all to know that while we are in the top 30 of podcasts in the country.
Oh, hell yeah.
On all platforms.
Oh, double hell yeah.
Yeah. We are getting ready to break 30,000 listens in the first 7 episodes, which I expected 25 for the 12. So we're like way ahead of where I thought. But we don't get any kind of like pay per play until iHeart recoups their investment.
Mm-hmm.
And that is somewhere around 60,000 listens.
Mm-hmm.
So my producer and I were just like, it looks like we're not going to make anything else off this. Yeah. You know, but you know what? I'm hoping, you know, this is a good like foot in the door type thing. To where I could like do voice. I mean, dude, I'd even do voiceover shit, man, or read audiobooks. Like if I can just like chill at home and like do this, I'm fine. Like if I'm not going
like chilling all day today, fucking reading about college football realignment and having my brain just, it was like a beautiful mind in my brain trying to figure out where all these schools were going because I've dedicated the last like 2 years to this show and some other projects like the kayfabe movie so much. I haven't followed football to the point where I just disconnected the satellite. The landlord actually pays for me to have a satellite here, which is kind of nice. But college football didn't come in.
Oh yeah.
But I just haven't been following it, so I had to take a pretty big dive back into what was going on. Like, you know, I know.
Oh, dude, and I imagine some of your day today, you look like Charlie from It's Always Sunny, where you just have like the cigarette hanging out, the things with all the cigarettes everywhere.
I left the house for a while to just like get out and do the same thing at this place that I go that I can. They'll let me eat and hang out there, and it's maddening what's happening. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. I waited to like not talk to you all day, and I knew you were busy too. But I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this on the show, and we're gonna open up the phone lines to just add more.
Dude, yes, and I'm so pumped. Even in that few minutes, like we were actually talking, and you were like, yes, and we knew exactly. We were on the same page here. I knew this was gonna be a good one. But you know, let's just jump into it then. And we all know that the latest realignment domino that came down was Colorado leaving the Pac-12.
Well, let's to the Big 12. Let's get people ready. You know, college football is a world going through some major changes with its divisions. Age-old rivalries gone. Geography be damned. This is a grab for large market schools and television deals. The realignment is akin to MarketWatch's mergers and acquisition segments. Universities that go from FCS, or what was Division II to Division I, get a huge bump in enrollment. Even though at some of these schools, sports is a loss leader, some of the smaller ones. We're going to get in the history of all this moving around, where it started, where it's going, and what does it all mean in the long run. Mac, can you give us kind of a brief history on realignment? I guess maybe Penn State. You want to start with Penn State?
No, we're going to go back to 71, my friend.
Oh my goodness.
1971 was when the first big realignment kind of thing dropped. And that was South Carolina leaving the ACC to go to the SEC. Now, this was the first big school to kind of leave their conference. There was a lot of moving and shaking in the 20s and 30s, right? Because, what we know is the SEC started in 26. You had your kind of flagship schools, but there was a lot of in and out. People forget Tulane, founding member of the SEC. Okay.
Well, yes, it makes sense geographically. Greenway. It makes sense geographically because Tulane is in Louisiana.
Exactly. Just like the University of Chicago, founding member of the Big Ten. I know a lot of people are like, they actually have sports teams. Not anymore.
Not anymore. Northwestern took that up.
Yeah. So there was a lot of moving and shaking until they kind of settled on the teams that we would in the 70s come to know and love as our regional conferences. So the ACC kind of had the coast locked down from Virginia south. You had the SEC, which I'm going to go ahead and maybe drop another truth bomb or knowledge bomb on you guys. The ACC and the SEC used to be one conference until the 1950s, right? And then the teams that became the Southeastern Conference were pretty pissy at the East Coast teams, so they split off and formed the SEC, right? But they kind of settled, right? So you had the ACC on the East Coast, you had the SEC kind of in our deep South, what we would call the deep South. Mm-hmm. The Big Ten was the big Midwestern league, and then out west, or in Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, you had the Southwest Conference.
Oof, yes.
Which then would become the Big Eight later on. And then you had for teams even further west, you had what has actually made a comeback in the Western Athletic Conference and the Pac-8. Mm-hmm. But in 1971, South Carolina left because they felt like the ACC was far too centered on what they called the Tobacco Road schools, which is Duke, Carolina, NC State, and Wake Forest. And they were, they felt like they were getting a short shrift. But keep in mind, at this point, South Carolina was not. They're not. I mean, to this, what you would call a really great athletic program. They have fits and starts every so often, but for the most part, they're a middling program, and they have been since the 70s. Right.
Well, you have a private university on the other side of the state in Clemson.
Well, yes. On top, I mean, even then, you have to understand. Clemson was a doormat, with the exception of a year or two in the 80s, until Dabo Swinney took over that job. I mean, he is a master salesman. I wouldn't say he's a great X's and O's coach, but if there's a Clemson fan in chat, go ahead.
He's got a ring, brother.
Yeah, I know. But see,
I was there.
That's the great thing about being a college coach. You do not have to be a good X's and O's guy. You have to be a good CEO. That's what you got to be, right? And Dabo is probably easily top 3 in the country right now, as far as being able to manage a program like that.
And I like the way that you put that, the CEO, because that's also the way I kind of try to explain music production in the kind of Fortis sense of what it was in the early days of rock and roll. All those Phil Spectors and all these people, even Rick Rubin to a certain degree. He doesn't know how to play anything. He doesn't know any knobs on the board.
I mean, Jason, who's the big dude that was out west around LA? We're talking early to mid 80s when you had the really young grunge scene moving down to LA to kind of get more scenery, like
Ross Robinson. Tours.
Maybe that was
he did a lot of the new metal stuff. Most of those people were in Washington or Chicago.
When I read Everybody Loves Our Town, there was just one guy that was centered in LA. that worked with a lot of these bands, but he controlled all the ticket sales. That's where he got people. Like he was a promoter. And
Bill Graham?
Yes, that's him. That's him. That's him.
Yeah, like I mean, that's you kind of got to look at coaches as kind of project managers more so than maybe CEO is a better term of these really large sports programs. I think project manager is better. I think the athletic director is probably more of a CEO. So when we look at these people and think that they're X's and O's guys, and that's why they got this job, to Mac's point, I do think it's about selling yourself and being able to get a situation like working at a school like Clemson and being able to sell the boosters and being able to sell students, because a lot of these kids that go to these schools aren't from the area at all, which is another thing we're going to talk about, which I think is really important.
Which before I even go on, like we have this regional breakdown, and like if you guys can just kind of picture the United States, you're like, Mac, there is no big football conference on the East Coast, north of Virginia, and that's because nobody wanted to do it. Joe Paterno, from the time he took over at Penn State until the time they joined the Big Ten, was dying to form an East Coast football conference, right? But what you have to understand is the East Coast, I mean, Paterno coached at Penn State, right? Like, that's not even what I would call the East Coast. Not even, like, Happy Valley isn't.
Like, that's not even near Philly.
Yeah, like,
yeah.
Right? But the East Coast, we'll say New England down through, like, Delaware into Maryland, that's not a football hotbed as far as support for the college team, right? Now, they put out some great high school players that leave their home and go to other places to go to school. So that's just how it was. But Paterno was dying fighting like hell to start an East Coast league. It just never took off. So what you have by the late 70s is a large number of independents on the East Coast, right, until you hit Virginia. Okay. And then you have a few independents, teams like Penn State, Pennsylvania is still Midwest, no matter what anybody wants to really give me shit. Okay. It's Midwest.
As a true man from Ohio.
Yeah. Right. Listen, I can only hate within my region, and I hate Pennsylvania and I hate Michigan. So it has to be Midwest. Right. And then as you headed further west, you had independent teams, right? So in 78, this is where you see the Pac, what used to be called the Pacific Coast Conference, become the Pac-8. And that's when Arizona and Arizona State both made a decision to join the PCC, and it became the Pac-8. Now, see, this is what I think is hilarious is the Rose Bowl's been played continuously almost since the mid 1900s, right? But people forget, like, until the formation of conferences and like radio deals in the 60s, it was heavily favored to USC, UCLA, the Southern California schools and the PCC. It wasn't a Pac-12 thing, right? Like the PCC morphed into what we know as the Pac-12 now, but like there were a lot of Pacific Coast schools that got in to the Rose Bowl because of the ridiculousness of how they place teams. Everybody has to realize, like, the whole Pac-12 Big Ten thing didn't start until the early 80s, right? That's when it became a conference only thing. Before that, it was kind of more of a gentleman's handshake agreement. It's going to be the Big Ten champ and the PCC, then the Pac-8 and the Pac-10, Pac-12 champ, right? So like it wasn't like all these bowl alliances that we have now wasn't a thing until the early 80s, right? But in 78, Arizona and Arizona State joined the Pac, what would become the Pac-8. They were in the WAC, and everybody has to understand the WAC was the power conference out west. It wasn't the Pacific Coast Conference. Pacific Coast Conference was 6 teams. I think 3 of them were private.
They were called the 6-pack for a while before they were the Pac-8.
Yeah.
And USC, it kind of had some ups and downs, but Arizona and Arizona State were big time schools in the WAC. BYU was in the WAC originally, wasn't they?
Yes, absolutely. They were. They represented the WAC when they won the national championship in '84 when Jim McMahon was doing.
Jim McMahon was quarterback. And who was
first.
quarterback before Jim McMahon? The Raiders' Mark Wilson.
Like, can we also bring up the fact that how the fuck did Jim McMahon get into BYU?
Because isn't he from LA?
Dude, yeah, but like
Or San
that guy
Diego?
in high school, you know, goddamn well had more coke in his system and booze in his system. Right? like when he got to Salt Lake City, how did he get to campus for visits? And like some LDS dude wasn't like, "Oh my god, you smell like a brewery."
Yeah.
And Jim McMahon just pulls the sunglasses lower and does that bullshit smile I did. You know, I think it's hilarious that Jim McMahon, the guy who admitted doing coke on the sidelines as the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, the guy who admitted to openly taking steroids because of all the lower body injuries he started to receive, like when he was the backup in Green Bay and Cleveland in the early 90s, right? The guy who did all that, you know, he was clean enough to get into BYU. Okay, but
you know, I refuse to believe that Jim McMahon was not high out of his mind.
Yeah. Okay, so in '83, and I know we're kind of we're spread out at this point, everybody, and I understand, but Georgia Tech left the SEC to go to the ACC. One of the big selling points for them to turn was the fact that they were independent for a bit. Mm-hmm. They felt they really needed to get back into a conference, and they wanted an easier way to get in there. So they're like, ACC, let's go. And in '91 under Bobby Ross, you know, ended up winning a national title. But they haven't really done much since, honestly, since Paul Johnson left, you know, since he was fired. But here's the big one. This is where we start getting into more recent stuff. In 1991, the Big East, which was a basketball conference. Like that's the Georgetown, that's, you know, the St. John's, you know, these are the power Catholic schools.
All the Saint schools, yeah.
Yes. You know,
Villanova.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right. Big East is like, we have to get in on this football shit, right? So immediately, what do? They decide that they're going to start inviting football-only members. And the first ones they did, Miami, you know, throw up the U, right? Mm-hmm. Rutgers, Temple, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, football-only members, right? Rutgers and West Virginia would end up coming on as full members in '95. And now Notre Dame became a non-football member of the Big East in 1995, right? Mm-hmm. So Notre Dame basketball isn't that bad, but you know, you got to think late '90s going into the early 2000s, mid 2000s. This is when Notre Dame basketball kind of like snapped back and became kind of a really good school. That was a great addition to have, you know, for that Catholic kind of majority, right? But in Miami's first season in the Big East, they won a national championship, right? Like, so instant gratification with that. But in '92, after the implosion of the Southwest Conference, which if anybody knows, the Southwest Conference was essentially the Texas schools, Oklahoma State, Arkansas, but you had SMU essentially torpedo the entire conference because Southern Methodist University, the place where, you know, Craig, what's his name?
Oh God, you're killing me because I know exactly. Eric Dickerson and Craig.
Yeah.
Yes, we're on the same team. The Pony Express backfield.
The Pony Express backfield.
Where everybody was getting paid. Where they were paying players so bad at SMU that they were using school letterhead.
Yes. Yeah. There's a great 30 for 30, and there's an outstanding book called Pony Excess, which is amazing. I couldn't put it down. Not to nerd out there, but I read all of it, right? Mm-hmm. But SMU exposes this large problem in the Southwest Conference where payers are just getting paid hand over fist with notes on university letterhead. Craig James, thank you, Slightly Tethered.
Thank you, Slightly Tethered. We couldn't think.
Yeah. But you know, every school was breaking the rules, but SMU is the one that got caught the most egregiously. So it torpedoed the entire Southwest Conference, right? So as it's dying, right? It's dying breath. Arkansas and South Carolina, not Arkansas, South Carolina, but Arkansas joins the SEC. Excuse me, right? So Arkansas was like a kind of a tent pole team, as they say, of the Big West. So when they left, it kind of allowed a lot of the other schools to start looking around. Now, naturally, that didn't happen when the Southwest Conference cratered. It formed the Big Eight out of Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, and then invited a couple other Texas teams, and it left the kind of the outlying Texas teams like TCU, SMU,
A&M,
Houston, all scrambling for a new place to go. But in '92, we see Florida State joining the ACC. They were an independent prior to that. And originally, like, you have to think, everybody, like, the ACC is kind of a nerdy conference the way the Big Ten was before they let Nebraska in. Like, all their universities were members of the Alliance of Academic Universities, or Association of Academic Universities, right? And so you had to have that designation to get in. Well, Florida State has never had that. But the reason the ACC extended the invite was wildly successful football program, keep them out of the SEC, right? So they end up joining. '93, we see the Big Ten extend the invite finally to Penn State. And Joe Paul jumps at it because he wants to be in a conference. He wants to play for trophies. That was Joe Pa's big thing. I want trophies in the atrium where I could bring all these, recruits in to see that, look at us, man. We are going to look at all we've won. As an independent, are you doing any of that? Fuck no. You're not getting trophies. Right? So it was kind of a shot across the bow for the rest of kind of the Midwest, because nobody thought the Big Ten would be the one to expand. The Big Ten was full of a lot of like conservative, university presidents, a lot of conservative states. And let's face it, at this time, your state legislature had a lot to say for your flagship state university, right? Kind of like what old Gavin Newsom tried to do in UCLA. We're trying to get out. The governor was like, whoa, wait a minute. And the California legislature was like, whoa, wait a minute. And the university presidents were all like, hey, we voted for it, so fuck off, we're leaving. The checks are bigger, in the Big Ten, right?
And it's not like we're leaving the location.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just leaving this conference.
So '96, this is when the Big Eight forms, and that would eventually spin off into the Big 12, right? Now, '99, I don't know if everybody knows this, the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, was at 16 teams. The first conference to ever hit 16. And what they played as far as a conference schedule is they played quadrants. So 4 teams would be put in a quadrant, and they all played each other. And then they played 4 other conference games, okay? And then 4 other non-conference games. And then they got an extra game if they flew to Hawaii to play Hawaii, right? So, they were one of the first conferences to have a conference championship game. They had divisions. Like, it was, it was nuts, right? Well, the Mountain West split off from the WAC, okay? And this led to the death of the WAC as a football sponsoring conference, which it came back 2 years ago in the FCS, which is what we would call Division 1AA, or we used to. And just this past offseason, Jason, I don't know if you know this, they have one school apply for promotion to FBS, big leagues. They applied to have the whole up. Because the NCAA doesn't know how to deal with that shit. They were just like, you got to spend another season down in FCS while we figure this out, right? So, like, we could easily have another 14 members jump up to FBS next season.
Jesus.
Okay. JB, no, Mountain West was not built around Unionville basketball. It was a football move. The WAC, you got to think UNLV basketball. That was 1991. That was Western Athletic all day. When the Mountain West brought UNLV with it. They were hoping that they could sustain basketball excellence so they could say like, hey, we're a good football conference and we're a good basketball conference. And that didn't happen until about 2 years ago, when they could say they were good at both. But, it was kind of nuts because like after the WAC split, like schools, New Mexico State and Idaho joined from the Sun Belt, which at the time was an FCS conference. There was a lot of that kind of like lower down. But this was the big one. This is when the big domino hit. And I think this is where Jason and I start getting on timeline here and start getting into like the nitty gritty of the actual discussion. 2004, you see the ACC poach Miami, Virginia Tech from the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
ACC conference at the time, the conference shore up football. But Jason and I were talking earlier, and I think this is where we could actually get into this now, Jason, is we have, we said that, college football is literally a mirror for, kind of like the neoliberal economic policy.
Oh yeah.
Of the 80s and 90s, right?
Oh yeah. These are not state universities or private universities or higher education. This is, moving decimal points and names on spreadsheets at the end of the day. And there's an interesting stockpiling that we're seeing, and I do appreciate Mac giving us the history because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. But that history is a long storied one. Like Mac said early on, certain schools stop becoming sports schools for various reasons. Sometimes sports are not the money maker that we think they are, especially when we talk about schools that were sports schools, maybe in the turn of the century, and even to the 50s. There was, massive shifts as more bowls come to be, and television deals are also extremely important when we talk about these conference shifts.
And I mean, before you go on, Jason, remember, guys, in 1984, you had the Board of Regents of Oklahoma filed a court case against the NCAA all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court sided with the Board of Regents, saying that the TV, the controlling of radio, and more importantly, the TV rights violated the Sherman and Clayton because it prohibit open competition and trade. Right. So at this point, it cracked the stranglehold, because the reason we had regional conferences was because it was most games were carried heavily on radio. Right. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, they travel to Happy Valley, I can get a radio broadcast of them, and I might be able to watch them on one of the 4 networks once every couple years, because the NCAA said, well, Penn State's number 3, Ohio State's number 2, way to make money, get eyeballs on the TV screen, right? This, this court case broke that open, and it said the schools who would then later on essentially give up their TV rights to the conference, which is a lot of the issues we're seeing with the Pac-12 and the ACC right now, right? But they were in charge of their own TV rights and can sign their own TV deals. And who was one of the first schools to do this? Notre Dame.
Signed that massive deal with NBC.
NBC that they've had for almost 30 years. And the fact of the matter is like, I was talking to somebody last night, and they're like, this is bullshit. Notre Dame just needs to nut up and join a conference. And I was like, contractually, they're obligated to join the ACC. If they make the decision to join a conference, because they are ACC member, except football, and they have to play 5 games against ACC's teams. So, it's as long as they can keep that 10 money that they get from NBC, they're going to stay independent. And I don't blame them. They're getting like $35 million a year just so NBC can show. Share. Yeah. Well, I mean, this year, or next season, they have to share, because that's when the Big Ten's new deal comes in, and the NBC will be carrying Big Ten games. So, but yeah, I mean, that NCAA versus Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma, like this was a big thing, and it really cracked open everything, you know, like people can say, well, SMU have been paying players for a while, but this gave the impetus to do so, because if we stack our team with players, can get on TV and increase our worth. And then we can get players from not just Texas per se, but we can get them from Oklahoma. We can get them from as far as Florida. We can get them from, you know what? It was all, like you said, Jason, it wasn't done in a vacuum. Like, it doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
There are long-term effects that smart people look out and see that this could happen.
And what's interesting about the whole thing when it comes to in my opinion, when it comes to players and being able to stockpile players, when we talk about student athletes, which, you know, I can't stand that terminology, you know, a brief history on that. A lot of that comes from a lawsuit that happens when some players, I forget, in the 50s, I believe it was, hurt themselves to the point where they couldn't play college anymore, and they definitely couldn't play at the pro level anymore. So they asked for compensation from their schools. And that's where you get that kind of, you know, that seminal lawsuit that says, no, you're a student athlete. We're covering your education costs by you playing. You're not an employee. But our new labor board has changed that.
Yeah,
that's one of the good things you get, I guess, with the Biden administration, is this kind of.
I mean, dude.
Yeah.
The Department of Labor has been one of the only redeeming factors of the Biden administration. I don't know how long that's going to last, though. I feel like Biden is going to be like, hey, man, hey, Jack, I need you to pull back on that chain a little bit. You're getting a little out of hand. You know,
this is insane, because we never talk about what happens. You know, these young athletes, and this goes beyond football. I don't care what sport you play, but generally, you know, football, right? It's not just you coming on a scholarship. Sometimes you can get on and get a job, right? To get on the team because they want you to redshirt, or they just want to make sure they stockpile all the talent, so you don't really have, especially in a region, so you don't really have a certain amount of competition. I mean, if you look at the players that have left some of the major schools, the first two draft picks that are quarterbacks this last year are from the other side of the country. They're from LA.
Yeah. I mean, and we talked about that with Coach, your buddy that coaches basketball.
Will.
Yeah, Will. About kind of like the American academy system. I'm gonna kind of like, the academy system is a European thing, and I think it's great, especially if you have a kid that maybe doesn't show a lot of predilectism, but is really good on a soccer pitch or a basketball court or whatever the fuck field that they play on. Right? It's good because they're gonna get an education. They're gonna learn their what they need to, and then they're being paid to play their sport as young as 12. But in here, we have shackled sport to university, right? And I absolutely detest that. I think we should have an actual American academic system rather than the one we have, where, you know, you have hover parents that pay tens of thousands of dollars to send their kids to these private academies, or these you know, these really kind of swanky, you know, positional, you know, scouting things. You know, and the thing is, every position has them now, especially all, like, you have lineman camps where this is what they do. And they, like, Orlando Pace was that one 2 years ago. You know, the Hall said 3 words his entire playing career.
Well, what does it mean?
Suddenly,
let me ask you this question, and I ask this question to the audience, and I'm going to open up the phone line shortly, Mac. But when I do, I'm going to have to get off the screen, so you're going to have to be entertaining for a couple minutes.
Not a problem.
I'm not worried.
I can do that.
What does it mean when we're in a moment right now? I really do believe that. When we're in this moment where everything is about branding, and my good friend and basketball coach at Oakland High, who has players in the NBA, players that played overseas as well. These kids understand when they're coming in at the high school level that they're a brand. You know, we're not seeing as many people piss off their money that we saw maybe in the 80s and 90s, even in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
We're not seeing that at all. And Will actually remarked on that by some of his players talking about when they went to the rookie symposium. They were asking some of these athletes and managers to stay longer so they can talk more about how to diversify their portfolios and how to basically work their brand for the longer term. And now with the NIL, you're allowing young people at the college level, which I really appreciate it, because you think about, you don't really get paid when you're a quote student athlete, especially if you're in one of the sports that doesn't make money. So if you're a woman's softball player or a woman's basketball player, or now you can do a camp, you can have a podcast and earn some cash. This is all relatively new, but it's also changing the landscape, because now these schools literally have NIL people within the school to say, look, if you come to Virginia University, this is where you want to be, because we have NIL people in here. They're going to help you with your branding. So in this era of branding, where you can move, the fluidity to move within schools is happening. You have major universities stockpiling talent. Schools like Alabama, for example, is so filled with talent that you can be a 5-star recruit and never see the field.
Oh, absolutely.
And kind of waste your eligibility in these places. What does all that mean in the grand scheme of things? Are we just going to burn through athletics, or are we going to be much like you see European soccer and have so many tiers of leagues, because there's just so many really good athletes that'll never get a chance to play in the NFL? Or does the NFL stay with its massive monopoly power and just, kind of have what the NBA is doing with the Big Three Ice Cube thing?
I think NBA, they have a great developmental league. The G League has shown that they can develop players. You're seeing more and more players being called up from G League teams. And I mean, Jason, I don't know if you saw this, but every team but one in the NBA will have their own G League affiliate after, like, when the next season starts. So that's huge, because you got to think 10 years ago, you had 2 to 3 teams sharing one G League team, right? So it's a little different now, especially with the Ignite there, which is the team of essentially kids who don't want to go to college, so they spend a year on the Ignite, and they've put, like, I think the team's been around 3 years, and they've had about 6 first-round draft picks, which is an amazing fucking turnaround, considering that your everyday roster is only 12 players, right? So, like, that's outstanding. But as far as the football goes, I think this is where we see the importance of spring football, right? The NFL revolves around the passing game now, and it is, it's not even quiet about it. I mean, there's been a huge discussion online between the star running backs in the league about what do we do to stop what they're doing to us, meaning how do we still continue to get paid, and sacrifice our bodies, and we have the shortest shelf life, the shortest careers, in the NFL. Like, how do we prove that we're still important to the game? But quarterback play is the most important thing. And the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of young quarterbacks coming into the league that are not ready to play in the big leagues. So I think this is, like, again, this spring football comes in. And I think that the NFL should actively work to keep both the XFL and the USFL floating. So you can get players snaps, get them game film, and then get that film up to the NFL. That's very important. The fact of the matter is, every team needs 2 quarterbacks, the primary big name starter, and you just can't have a capable backup anymore, just in case. So, it's, you don't need 32 quarterbacks, you need 64. And the only way to do that is to ensure that these kids continue to play. So as we see the NCAA kind of coalesce around 2 conferences, which is going to continue to happen, it's not going to stop. You'll probably see the SEC and the Big Ten be the two conferences that survive. And I think they kind of strike out on their own. Now, if I were, honestly, if I were a man of means and a billionaire, I'm going to both of those conferences, and I'm literally telling the athletics pro departments, we will take this over, and we will just make club teams, like, period. And then they could do that. I mean, because that's the thing. There are a lot of amazing athletes out there that are not ready to sit through fucking 5 hours of lectures a day and write papers. And then, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and that's okay. That is okay. You know? So why force a kid to go do that for 3 years in the case of football? They have to do it for 3 fucking years, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. Instead of making them go do that, right? Either this rich, like I said, if I was a billionaire, that's what I would do. I would just go to Ohio State, fucking Florida schools, and I'd be like, hey, man, I'm going to fund a league, and they're all club teams, and they have nothing to do with universities anymore. They just keep the nicknames. Period. And I just pay the fucking kids. Right? And I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm going to pay you and still let you do the NIL thing, brand your shit, like get out there on TikTok, do your thing, dude, right? Like extra money. And then when the NFL, because this thing is as slow moving as the United States military, things in the NFL don't fucking change very quickly. I mean, they were the last league to approve free agency in 1992. Like,
Kurt
every
Flood
other
is
sport had it.
71. Yeah, Kurt Flood is like 71. Yeah.
Yeah. You know? So, dude, I mean, that's the thing, JB. College sports should not be centered around basketball and football. Like, if you want to talk to me about college sports, I went to a very small D2 school, and I was a sports writer and sports editor for the school newspaper. I went to more women's soccer, softball, baseball, swimming meets. That is college sports. Football and basketball are not college sports at the top levels. That is not college sports. That is semi-pro or developmental league. That's exactly what that is. And we need to stop calling it college sports because that's not what it is. The NFL for fucking over 100 years has gotten away with using college football as a developmental league because they didn't want to pay for it. That's all it was. They had a free feeder system in both basketball and football, the top 2 sports in this country, right? From the college ranks into the pros. But when you look at hockey, baseball, we have MLR, Major League Rugby. We have an American Rugby League now. We have MLS and USL, USLW. We have professional soccer leagues, right? Mm-hmm. All of them have minor league systems to put players into, right? But because it's not the big 2 in the United States, no one gives a shit. They're like, okay, I'll go watch minor league baseball. I've been to freaking a couple MLR matches in Austin before they shut the team down because the owner was a crooked fuck. I go to minor league baseball games. I go to, when the G League still had a team here in Fayetteville, I went and saw that, right? And JB,
there's a G League team here in Tijuana.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, the Warriors.
Dude, the NBA is planning to put another like 2 or 3 teams down there because they know that this is a huge growth market. And in Mexico, basketball is nowhere. It'll never be as popular as soccer, but it's not bad being number 2.
It's surprisingly popular. Football is also surprisingly popular. Also, everyone, the phone lines are open. 626-873-8658. 873-8658. You guys know I get charged by the second. We want to hear y'all's voices. There was some people, some young kids, and of course parents fundraising for, get this, Mac, the high school football team here in Rosarito. There's a football stadium here for Tijuana as well.
Do you know what I follow on Twitter and actually pay $6 a month to watch? The European League of American Football.
Really? The holdover from NFL Europe.
No, that was completely owned by the NFL. There are 14 teams in 8 countries, and they reached a deal with the NFL to use the old NFL Europa names. So you have the Hamburg Sea Devils and the Rhine Fire, Barcelona Dragons. They're all back. But their plan is to expand to 20 by 2025. And it's pretty fucking rad, dude.
Is this part of spreading American exceptionalism throughout the world? Or is this just simply there's captive markets and we want to sell football jerseys like you guys sell soccer jerseys?
Yeah, that's it. And we're seeing an expansion of American football. Like it took hold in the UK and Germany, especially. And honestly, it's because we have an American service members, heavy presence of American service members in both countries, right? But the fact of the matter is there's a World Cup of American football, right? Mostly done with college players that don't, go on to the next level. But last year it was held in Japan, right?
Interesting.
So, it's an expanding sport. Is it going to be as big as like rugby or soccer? No. And for everybody like talking about like head injuries and shit, I just want you guys to know, soccer has a higher rate of head injury than rugby does. So therefore, rugby is a far superior sport than soccer is.
We have a phone call, Mac. We have a phone call. And what I love about the Bravest is they inspire the rest. So tonight, we're going to go longer than an hour. I forgot to say this is a champagne-free day today. There's no champagne room tonight. And I want you guys to call. I would love it if you stayed on topic, but I know people probably want to call and yell about other things. There were some controversial shows this past week on this channel. So that being said,
hey Jason, you don't have to worry about it. I watched all of them. I've got your back. Let's do this.
I'm not too worried. And don't mind my camera angle. My phone is my camera, so I had to take it off. So you can almost see behind the scenes of TIR West. Almost behind the scenes. You can't see.
You guys can't see that Jason's sitting.
Caller from the 559. What is your name and where are you calling from? Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Push it through. This is what happens when you don't have your call screen.
How you guys doing?
Good. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from?
Sure. This is Eric calling from Fresno, California.
What's up, E?
Hey, just living the dream, man. Kind of like you, but just maybe it's a little bit warmer here than it is in old Mexico.
We had a heat wave today. It was like 79.
Jason, I want to fight you.
There you go, man. I don't know what to do. It's just we got to trade places or something. But anyhow, it was great because I never thought of. I think he had mentioned something about connecting college sports and neoliberalism, and I actually just want to extend that. In that when you find out, I mean, especially since he went to a D2 school, I actually went to a D3 school. You learn a bunch of interesting stuff. I mean, even before I went to the D3 school, was over at a D1 school, and you kind of find out a lot of this stuff's engineered. A lot of this stuff isn't what they claim it is. It's like walk-ons. The story. It's great for that stuff because what does neoliberalism need? They need stories. Oh, the rags to riches. Oh yeah, they came up from nothing. Well, you find out that the nothing they came up from was already preordained.
Yes.
I'll give you a perfect example. You guys, because since you Jimmy Leonard from Wisconsin. I don't know if you guys familiar with him. I was actually in Wisconsin, Russ County, at the time when he was playing high school, and we went over to recruit him. And the coach basically said, "Don't even bother. He's going to Wisconsin. We've already talked to the coaches. We've already established a relationship. He's going to quote walk on." And well, I think he's like the assistant coach or something like that now there. So spend a little time in the NFL, but it goes into that whole story, right? And they attached it with the pageantry because you get lost in that pageantry of a school. more than even like a professional sport. And that's what makes it even more ingrained, because then goes to what you guys were talking about, like with soccer. Because remember what they tried to do in England with that Super League that fell flat on its face because they said, oh, there was a little bit of overreach. Because
oh, man, Eric, you are not kidding. That
this
was
is our team, motherfucker. So
yeah, absolute shit show, that Super League, dude.
But what do you think, Eric? So, Eric, I want to ask you this, Eric, before Mac asks you a question.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, as someone, I know you're not from Fresno, but you are in Fresno, and a big thing in Fresno is Fresno State University, a school that has put out several, Pro Bowl professional athletes, especially of late. You have the Cars that come up, and they're native of the area. I believe they're from Fireball. You also have Devontae Adams, which is from not too far north in the Bay Area. So
Dilfer before them, remember?
Trent Dilfer, first overall pick. Tedford was there.
Can we see how was fucking Trent Dilfer fucking first round pick?
First overall pick. Hey, don't you dare speak ill of the Bulldogs.
Dude was a fucking bum.
You know what, Mac? You know what Trent Dilfer has and you don't? A Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, you know what I also have that Trent Dilfer does? And he's self-respect. Look at this fucker, okay? I may be small potatoes, Jason.
Too. That guy got nothing but hate. It's just, a Super Bowl winning quarterback that just got nothing but crap.
You know
on,
why?
Right?
You know why? Because this bearded man that you see in front of you. This is why. But Eric, real question.
Oh my.
How do you feel about Fresno State in the Pac-10?
I don't like it. I mean, just innately, they're historically a Western Athletic Conference school. I was kind of iffy when they joined the Mountain West, but I mean, it just shows you just how nakedly, they're just money grabbing at this point. They're just kind of, you almost want to call it clout chasing. I don't know what else to kind of say, but it's like we're chasing a market, and we want to be where we can at least be seen more and maybe wash the old reputation. Because remember Pat Hill. And they kind of had a few little hiccups after that, but then Dilfer kind of brought him back a bit. Or no, not Dilfer, Tedford, finally brought him back, won him that title. But to me, it's fine. Will I watch? Sure. Will I root for him? Well, of course. But is it kind of like, is it a foul taste in one's mouth? Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel as a college football fan? And again, this question also I'll put out to everybody watching the show. I am, of course, a California native. I grew up watching all of Mac's horrible schools and all those SEC schools first because it came on earlier. But I also grew up watching USC and UCLA. I know USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten together as a package deal. But what does that mean then when you can't have these rivalries that we've grown to love? I love watching rivalry week in college sports. I love Oregon State. I love USC, UCLA. I also love watching USC play Stanford ever since Harbaugh was there, and he made that whole he created a rivalry. I actually ran into a USC player when I lived in the Central Coast. And we were talking, and I was like, was the rivalry real? He goes, dude, I don't know what Jim Harbaugh said in secret to Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll hated that man so much that we had to get up for that game. So when you lose these rivalries, I don't think you can make the same rivalry, because what goes into these rivalries is regional dislike. I am a Bay Area native. I do not like Los Angeles as a city. The architecture is gorgeous. My good friend Ben Burgess lives in LA. But will I talk shit about LA every time I get in there? Hell yeah, I will.
Hey, Jason, I've been there twice.
Oh, yeah.
Been to LA twice, and I'll still talk shit about it, all right?
That's what we're supposed to do. That's part of the fun of the rivalry, right? To lose all that.
Right.
I don't know if I could feel the same way about watching USC play Penn State, even though it's probably going to be a great game. That interstate hatred isn't there the same way that you have with USC and UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Stanford, USC. To lose all that, what games weren't interesting to me? Texas A&M versus Alabama. I've spent time in the South. I know what those Southern games are like. I know what those people are like.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's Jordan
now, Eric,
Shout out to Jordan Dubin.
Police.
Here's a quick question, my friend. The fact
I
of the matter is, like, you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, my friend. Here's the thing. Like this realignment is not stopping anytime soon. And I hate to say this, one of the worst football teams of the last 20 years in Colorado was the tipping point for all of it. Whether Deion's there or not, but they are literally one of the worst football programs of the last 20 years.
Yes.
And they are the domino that's going to kick off, honestly, the death of the Pac-12.
So crazy.
Right? I don't know if you guys saw the press release tonight. Kliavkoff was supposed to announce a new deal, and he didn't, because Apple TV said, listen, if we're carrying your games, it's going to be tied to subscribers. Your payout will be tied to subscribers. So however many subscribers you can get us, we'll pay you more. And Kliavkoff was not
interesting. I didn't know
ready
that.
for that. Oh, yeah. The press release came out, like, Jason, literally 30 minutes before we went on air. Okay.
We got a hot take.
Now, oh, yeah. Now, Eric, this is what I'm going to ask you, though, right? You have said, we're talking Fresno State here. We're talking Bulldogs, red helmets, tacky green V on the back. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
But,
the Valley Red.
Okay. But the fact of the matter is you're not stopping the momentum for realignment. So Fresno State's going to be staring down the barrel of a gun soon, real quick. Do we kiss Big 12 ass to get in there so we can move up to Power 5 and stay relevant, and maybe, just maybe, every couple years we get on fire. We have a couple, we have some cars and a Devontae Adams, and a Jeff Tedford there just scheming his way into wins, right? Or do you drop down a level?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these non-Power 5 teams, when the sport coalesces around the two conferences, and at this point it's Big 10, it's SEC, right? There's not going to be any room for Big 12, ACC, right? Or any of the Group of 5, right? Because, I mean, arguably, and feel free to argue with me, the best Group of 5 conference is the Sun Belt, and there isn't one that comes close. Not the MAC, not Conference USA, which was rated, right? Like, none of them.
Yeah.
It's the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt is the positioning itself to say, hey, you teams, all you 14 teams here right now, you're not all going to the Group of 5, but some of you might, and we're putting you in to do so. So say Fresno State makes that decision. They bite the bullet to drop down one level to FCS. How do you think that affects sport, TV? Like, who's going to watch them at that point?
No, that's true. And I would. And see, I think there's enough truth in each of them. It's almost like, because, I mean, yeah, of course. And I think that will at least kind of trump, any other ill will or feelings towards, what I mentioned earlier. Because, I mean, he had a interesting nail on the coffin. Yet that's an unintended consequence. I almost think that precisely what you said is kind of maybe not completely, compensate for it, but maybe given a little time, it's kind of like you almost, realign how you view it. So it's kind of like, you're giving up the old way of viewing how this stuff was run, and then accepting the new, like, is it okay? We're not totally sure yet, but maybe we'll like it. But if that makes sense, if that kind of more or less answers it.
Yeah, I mean, and to Dank, what is the worry about dropping down? Like, when we get to 2, like, maybe 20 team conferences, and I'm telling you, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to get to quick, especially if the rest of the 4 corner schools decide to go to the Big 12, right? Which is looking more and more likely is going to happen. The Big 10 will go in and swoop up in Washington and keep the academic standards up, honestly.
Sure. Yeah, Stanford's the cute girl, or the ugly girl that raises the GPA sorority.
let's face it, the SEC has their doormat private academic school in Vanderbilt. The Big Ten is going to need one. That'll be Stanford.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
You know, the matter is we're gonna get to 2, like 20 to 22 team conferences, and that's gonna be college football. That's gonna be the college football playoff teams. That's gonna be it. You know, every other team, and now we're at 133 FBS teams right now, as at the time we're talking at the second. With the, you know, like I said earlier, if the WAC gets permission to move their entire conference up a level next year, that will be 145. And keep in mind, we have 42 bowl games. So that's 84 teams that have to go bowling. And we're going to have 145 to choose from. You know, so like we're going to see a definite separation between those two power conferences and the rest of the sport. So you're going to have 100 teams. Like, what do we do now? You know, 100 teams, give or take. What do we do now? And I really think that they're going to make the decision, because it is so expensive to run an FBS football program. Like Eric, I live in North Carolina. I have no idea why Charlotte moved up. Why the fuck is Charlotte moving up to play FBS football? They couldn't afford an on-campus stadium. So you know where they play their games? Bank of America Stadium, where the Panthers play.
Where
right?
no one shows up.
Right?
Nobody.
No one shows up.
Nobody.
Where no one shows up.
12,000 people.
Bleachers, yeah.
12,000 people in an 80,000 seat stadium. And that freaked out.
Yeah,
that freaked out Charlotte backers so bad that they cobbled $400 million to buy a 25,000 seat stadium on campus to build it. And you know what the rule is in the NCAA for you to play FBS? You have to have 24,000 seats.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I heard, you know, I thought that was a rumor, but yeah, okay, yeah, I kind of figured there's like always some truth when you hear stuff like that. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. We don't need. I wish the NCAA and Jason and I have talked about this at length on previous episodes. How Mark Emmert is the spineless jellyfish of CEOs who just did nothing and collected massive paychecks. And now the NCAA has a new president, and guess what he's doing? Following in Mark Emmert's footsteps. Right? And then when he decides to crack down, Jason, and we talked about this, and we covered it on an episode. Who's he cracked down on? The Cavender twins. Of all people,
you know what? We have to crack down on. You know, Eric, thank you so much for calling. Appreciate
sure thing, guys. Hey, keep up the good work. It's a great show.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate it, Eric. Thank you, man.
We need to talk about that real quick. Talk about the Cavender twins, because one thing I want people to understand about why this is kind of a burn the britches for me is because we're privatizing fun, because sports is supposed to be fun. I don't care who you are. You should be having fun. I grew up in a world of police leagues, and your school had sports. Not anymore. You have to pay for private trainers. I don't care who you are. If you play women's basketball, you are paying for private trainers. If you play women's softball, there is someone privately training your child, because it's a serious game at this point. But let's talk a little bit about the Cavender twins.
Okay, so the Cavender twins started their career out at Fresno State, and Fresno State is a kind of a backwater for women's college basketball. And the Cavender twins, who, let's be honest, are two very attractive blonde women, white women,
who can ball.
A lot of exposure, ass off, right? Now, when they transferred at a booster's house dinner and paid for a private chef, and the Miami women's basketball program had to suspend their head coach 4 games and pay 2% of their athletic budget, 1 or 2%. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, Jason. I apologize for that. But 1 or 2% of their athletic budget, and as a fine, because it violated student athlete what do you call it? Student athlete, like behavior shit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, and keep in mind, this didn't come down until they were already deep into their tournament run. They were in the round of 16 when this shit happened.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, Kevin Twin did, let's do it. And when they showed up on their uniform on TikTok, like, nah, bitch, like they literally called out the NCAA press, like, come on, man. You know, like it was amazing, dude. But like these two young ladies made millions during NIL because, like, especially during the dead year 2020, right? Like when there were no fans in the crowd,
mm-hmm.
no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were doing TikToks, like getting people excited about Fresno State fucking basketball transferred, and like, and who's been excited
Fresno
about
State women's? Hold on. Let's pull back a little bit here. Fresno State. So we're talking about a small market team in between the Bay Area and LA.
Yep.
Their men's basketball hasn't been much to write home about in a while. The women's basketball team has two massively large TikTokers on it due to the NIL. And they are kind of an interesting package of like attractive young people and actually really good athletes. And you know, they're made for marketing. They're made for marketing.
They are signed to the WWE right now. They are starting training at the Athletic Performance Center down in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
And they signed that deal when they were still at Fresno State. Right. So they still had a year of eligibility and they were like, well, we're not coming back to Miami. They got their degrees. They had, like, I don't know if you guys know, like there's 2 free years left for college athletes because of COVID. Like that free year provision doesn't end until 2025. Mm-hmm. Right. So you can spend a little extra time. And Jordan, like women's sports are getting way more popular now. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like you're seeing athletes that you should not see at, like, you typically wouldn't see, I should say. You typically wouldn't see at like WNBA games. They're showing up. The WNBA has seen a huge climb in ticket sales and like asses in seats, and not just on TV. Their TV numbers are going up. Women's tennis is going up. Women's golf is going up. I mean, shit, dude, we're in the middle of the Women's World Cup right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Peacock is just ecstatic because people know that the 1 week free we get, I can't get it all. But the Women's World Cup's a whole month. So they know, Peacock and NBC execs know, I'm getting a whole fucking month out of at least like 400,000 people. And that's good. That's great for my bottom line. You know, like, you know, but yeah, Jordan, they are getting more popular, and it sucks that, you know, it hasn't been as, because like I remember being a kid, I would go to Rockers games when Cleveland still had a WNBA team. Good basketball, man.
Which is so funny because I remember back in the day when women's basketball was hitting, people would be like, I don't want to see, you know, all these outlet passing and, you know, pulling up, shooting 3-pointers. And that's what the NBA has become.
Oh, dude. Yeah. And the thing is, I hated hearing it's just rebounding. And I was like, you obviously haven't watched one single game, man. You haven't watched a one. You know, but yeah, like we're seeing a big shift, I think, a big shift in the business side of sport, right? Where we're seeing consolidation at the college level, especially in football, right? We're potentially going to see an expansion of the men's and women's college basketball tournament for the NCAA, because that's the one thing they control that makes a ton of money.
Ton of gambling money. And when you finish this, we have to get into gambling too, because that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. But like their TV deal will grow if there's more teams. You have more content to sell to networks, right? Mm-hmm. So the NCAA gets that. They don't get it for the college football playoff. The conferences get the money paid out, not the NCAA. The NCAA has nothing to do with crowning a college football champion. And it hasn't. I kid you not, it hasn't since 1985. Right? Like the NCAA has had nothing to do with it. So, you know, we're going to see an expansion of the men's and women's college basketball tournament. We're seeing, like Jason already alluded to, the uptick in legalized sports gambling, both at the professional and the college level, right? And it generates stupid money. And right now we have 20 states that have legalized sports gambling pending in the state legislature.
Sports gambling is another thing that's also driving, I think, all sports and year-round sports. Like,
that and fantasy sports.
Fantasy sports are a game. Fantasy, which is also kind of akin to gambling. I don't really separate those two because I put them all in the same category. Because gambling has changed from just action on the game to prop bets. And it's the gamification of betting as well, because we're not just talking about people having a bookie and placing a bet with a bookie. Now it's all about apps, fantasy sports through apps. But again, financializing enjoyment to this level, to me, is a problem, because what happens when every aspect of your life, even the things that are supposed to be quote unquote stress relievers, have all been financialized to this point? I mean, we've talked, at length about dating, and sadly, the show flyer that was up on accident, I wasn't on that show. I was taking a break, but I wanted to be on that show because we never really talked that much about the gamification of even meeting people through these apps, where it feels like a game, to the point where it's like, how do you now interact with people when it's like pulling a lever in Vegas? It's like, oh, I had a great interaction with this person, and I might even have got laid. What's waiting for me behind door number 2? And gambling is that same thing.
And before Arlo brought up a good question. Was there anything like fantasy sports before the internet? Absolutely. I remember fantasy baseball being done on paper. On paper.
Yeah. On paper, yeah.
You tabulated your stats after you agreed on what the points were for singles, doubles, homers, all that stuff, right? And you did it on paper, and you turned it into the league commission, and he validated it. Like, fantasy sports is an early 90s creation, man. Like, maybe not as big as it is now, but it totally was a thing before the internet. The internet just streamlined it, and it made it easy, like Jason said, to do the prop bets. You know what makes more money than actual betting on the Super Bowl? The prop bets. I had a soldier when I was in the military when the first Super Bowl at Levi Stadium, Jason, Super Bowl, they were like, well, not down in the Bay. It's like 30-some miles away. How many times are we going to see the Golden Gate Bridge shown during the telecast? I had a soldier that took that prop bet, and he's like 6 times, and put $900 on it.
Wow.
And they showed it 4 times, and he lost like 9/5 shit. I don't know how that, And I'm like, you are an E3. You make that much in 2 weeks. What the fuck is wrong with you, you dumb motherfucker? But yeah, like, prop bets drive sports betting now, especially with the advent of daily fantasy sports.
Yes.
Because, like, you're not just using the dollar amount to pick your team. You're placing bets on, okay, I have this player. He's going to get 2 hits today. I'm going to put $50 down on it. Right. Mm-hmm. And it seems like a small thing, but when 150 million fucking people are doing it, generates a ton
of money. But it changes the way we are interacting. And this is kind of my bigger point for all this. Yes, I am a sports fan. Yes, Mac and I love talking crap about sports, but bigger than that.
Absolutely.
How does it change the way we interact with these things that we played as children for fun?
Yes. And Jason, I think that goes back to, I don't remember, we were, when we started the Beyond the Red Zone Fantasy Football League, mm-hmm. Remember we talked about, like, if anybody gets on Twitter and starts talking shit to one of the guys on their team because they got hurt, you're going to catch a beating. Like, I hate that shit, man.
Yes, we didn't. Look, I hate a certain amount of sports shit talk. I think I've told this story before. My first tour in the UK, we took buses and trains everywhere because we didn't have a driver. And I mean, like, public buses. And so I found a paper.
That's an adventure. That is an adventure, my friend.
I won't even get into stories about very large fights we had getting lost. But I remember there was a paper, and I was reading like a weekly paper. And I was reading this weekly paper, and there was a boxer that had lost a match, and someone on Twitter said something about him. like this guy's a bum, and he's a shame on this whole town, whatever town he was from. He's a shame on the whole town. The boxer saw the tweet, and the boxer put it out to his Twitter followers, which he had many, and he said, "Whoever knows who this guy is, I want to know." His Twitter followers found out who the fella was and gave him the dude's address. But it wasn't the exact address. It was like an apartment building the guy lived in. And the boxer takes a picture of the dude's apartment building and was like, "I'm out front. I don't know which one you're in, but I'll knock on every door. Wow. But I want you to say this to my face." Yeah. And the guy, someone hacked my account. It wasn't me. I think you're the greatest guy in the world. Yada, yada, yada. And I saw a commercial recently for something where the guy goes, "Were you the person that said boxer so-and-so can't take a body shot?" and then they hit him and
dude, it's like, you remember in, what was it? Clerks 2. Remember when Jay and Silent Bob are they're trying to shut down the movie, and the Jay and Silent Bob movie, and all these people talk shit about it online, and they took their residuals from the movie to just fly to every city and find the people that talk shit to them, and then they just beat the shit out of them. And one of it was Kevin Smith and Jason Hughes beating the shit out of like a 12-year-old kid.
Hey, fuck it! You got to catch these hands when you talk. When you talk reckless,
yeah.
It's like we can joke about it, but there's again, when we put a value on people that do this stuff for our enjoyment, right? Fuck that guy. He's trash. He ruined my fantasy because he scored a last-minute touchdown, or he ruined the spread by missing the field goal. F that dude. Hope he dies. Like, the way we're looking at this is so insane. And if you're constantly engaged, you're constantly engaged to this level. We've privatized every relation we have socially. How can you relax and have a good time?
Yeah.
And what the sports become to you, but then another job. If you gamble to that level, it's another job.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. In Purple Flesh, you were right. It was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I apologize. It was the wrong Kevin Smith film. But no, I agree. Like, if you're one of those people, and let's face it, Jason, you and I both know one of these people. Okay, first off, don't talk to me about Emma Vickman right now. She won our league last season, and I was really butthurt.
I owe Emma. I actually, you know what? I owe Emma some stuff now that you reminded me.
You got to send her something. She won.
Thank you for reminding me.
Right?
Thank you for reminding me.
So, like, Emma wins. And when we were talking, when we brought her on to be on the Red Zone, what did I do? I talked a lot of shit to that poor woman about the Giants. I really did. And she's so fun. And I know there are people that have their own opinions on, like, Majority Report and all that shit. But Emma is one of the smartest, most fun people that I've gotten to interact with. Right. So, like, I kind of felt bad afterwards, but, like, she gave as good as she got. So that was pretty rad, but, like, when she pulls the league out after I was talking shit during our draft, I was like, fuck, man, if we do this again next year, I'm just going to not I would like
to do shit like this, because this is fun. And this to me is like, this should be fun community building.
Yes.
Right?
Dude. Jason, we have talked about this how many times? Sport is an amazing organizing tool. It's amazing. There's a reason that you have a white collar and a blue collar football team, European football team, in most major metropolitan European cities. There's a reason for that, right? Because white collar people saw, wow, this game's pretty fun. We need to, like, get our own shit going, because all these blue collar fuckers are just owning us when we, like, do our management versus employee games, right? So the blue collar people are like, let's do it. Dude, this is an amazing organizing tool that we need to, like, lean into way more than we do, especially in this country, right? We have this explosion of, like, IMG Academy in Florida. What's the big high school? De La Salle.
Mater Dei,
De La Salle,
California.
Yeah, Mater Dei, right? You have all this there. Well, why aren't we starting blue collar sports teams and leagues where parents can be like, listen, I work 2 jobs. Like, I need my kids to be involved with something that isn't going to break the fucking bank. You know, like, why aren't we doing that? And it could start out with a soccer league or a basketball league, 2 things where you don't need a lot of material funding to start, right? Why aren't we doing that? Well, because a lot of people on the left think that sport is a big waste of time. It takes away from organizing or agitating. You can do both right there on the pitch or on the fucking court.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, like it's really that simple. And I wish, you know, and this goes into a lot of like the issues I have, and, you know, especially with me being a vet, right? We talked about this too. You know, I've been in some orgs that are like, there is no room for veterans. You're a tool of imperialism and you willingly did it. Well, bitch, did you know why I joined the military? There was no jobs. I had to get something, right? Well, why'd you stay in so long? I had a responsibility for the young kids that got wrapped up in that same shit to try and get them home. That's why I stayed in as long as I did. It's a responsibility to the people. I don't give a fuck about this country. I don't give a fuck about the military. I don't give a fuck about the DOD. I cared about the people that I was surrounded by, right? And it's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing. Like, if you're coaching in a youth league, you give a fuck about these kids because, god damn, if they're not, these school districts and these cities and these municipalities aren't making it so financially prohibitive to just have kids go out and have fun playing a sport, right? And that's what it was. It was fun, dude. It was fun. I was never going to be anything good on a football field. I know that. I am 5'8". I'm slow. I played fullback in a wing T offense. I was a guided anvil just to go sent out to hit people. Right? And I fucking loved it because I was around all my friends, you know, and I got to have a helmet. And they made me wear a tie and a button-down shirt. Like, it was fucking rad, dude.
That's supposed to be the fun part. But, you know, I kind of weep for the child that isn't good, because not being good is like a whole nother, takes on a whole nother fucking beast now.
That's when you do what I did. I knew I wasn't good. I got into the coaching because, like, when I played high school football, I also coached our Little League teams. Right? I ran an offense at 16 years old for the biggest team in our Little League organization. And I have no idea how that fucking happened.
That's what Coach Will did. Coach Will was coaching since high school. They found out that there was an opening at the junior high, which at the time was down the street from our high school. And him and another good friend of ours coached the 6th and 7th grade teams, which was one of the funniest things ever. Those two jerk-offs coaching junior high kids, being like, you know, 4, 5, 6 years older. But it was it got him into coaching our high school, and then now he's at Oakland High, where one of the best players in the NBA, Damian Lillard, is one of his kids. And there's so many more. And not every kid goes on to play at the next level. You definitely understand that, because the big thing when you play for Will definitely is academics. The phone lines are still going to be open for a little bit longer, because this is all free champagne. No champagne room tonight, because we've opened the velvet rope for everybody. Call in if you have a take about something we're talking about today. You want to voice your opinion on that. If you want to talk about something from a previous episode, we'll listen. We've had hundreds of comments on the Cornell West show from people I've never seen before. So I'm sure someone has something to say about that. I don't know if I told you guys before we got on air. Somehow, you know, I introduced myself to Cornell West, and we're talking, and music comes into conversation. And he asked what kind of music I do, and I go, it's kind of heavy music, punky music. He goes, oh, like Rick James? And I was like, ooh. No, Dr. West, I do not sound like Rick James. In my head, I think I sound like Rick James, but in real life, I do not sound like Rick James. But I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about anything. That's why we open up these phone lines. That's the fun part about the phone lines.
Your boy's been trying to get like better shape, so I'm drinking a lot more water. And I had this little cup here is one of the gifts I had from doing press for the Leavenworth documentary. I went to like some tech website that wanted to interview Paul, the producer, because like if you've ever watched Leavenworth, he did a lot of overhead shots from a drone over the actual prison, which he got in a lot of trouble for. But they wanted to ask him about what drone he used, what camera he used, but they kind of brought me along for it. And this is one of the swag gifts I got. It's just like a ceramic version of the New York Greek coffee cup.
The one you always see in Law and Order.
Yeah. But I had a couple small drinks there, but I drink almost 2 gallons of water a day. And holy shit, dude. Like that was.
I too have gotten to that. I'm trying not to drink soda and drinking water. And I just hold my pee because I'm a professional.
Bro,
just so you guys know. I get Jason, stones, y'all heard, it's for you. Those stones are for you.
Jason's a much better man than me. And one episode he brings me on, you're gonna just see him double over in pain because it is a kidney stone that he's having a problem passing. Okay. But yeah, let's get another caller up and let's get back into this football realignment thing, because I think this is a big part, because this is literally happening in like this neoliberal economy. We're seeing what we would call small mom and pop shops, like you referred to earlier, like we were talking, Jason, as the old regional based conferences that are consolidating into these corporations that will hoard. And I hate to refer them as this, because athletes deserve better than be called resources. I fucking hate that, especially when we have literally been referred to as human capital by the head of the Fed at one point. But like we're going to see like the big teams reach out into states that used to. One of Ohio State's back is literally Florida. No contiguous border is shared, but Ohio State recruits Florida like nobody's business. Now, in the late 80s, early 90s, that would have never fucking happened.
No.
Never.
No.
But now, and I think a lot of it has to do with like Urban Meyer and those more CEO type coaches.
Yep.
Like we referred to, they're able to do that, So, I think like when I say 20 team conferences, I don't think they stop at 20. I think they eventually get to 32.
Well,
I think the SEC and the Big Ten get to 32.
It's what I don't like is I do think they're mining these children like resources, but I think the difference is you're going to get an athletic class kind of like you get in year. I think the U.S. for a change is, I don't know if it's on purpose, but this European style is exactly what we're seeing, because there's already an athlete class. We see it with the NBA. We've talked about this before ad nauseum, and I know we've been off the air.
Oh yeah, the multiple generation athlete.
That like this is the future, and what then happens, because sports are a loss leader. No one wants to deal with a lawsuit because your kid got a concussion. So no more professional athletes that he has in the NBA. I just saw a picture of him from a few months ago. He was hanging out with Dame. I guess they did a camp or something in Oregon. And Dame also comes back and donates stuff to the school, his shoes and everything like that. What then happens to, just high school level sports? It's going to go away.
Yeah, or we're going to see a proliferation of club teams. Right, which I don't think is exactly good.
No, just like I want to see music in schools. I want to see art in schools. Where did all those things go?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's just like what happened in Texas yesterday. Houston Independent School District has said that libraries will be closed and turn into
detention centers or whatever.
like
behavior modification cells.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's kind of misleading because books will still be there and kids will still be allowed to get them. But the point of a library is to say, hey, this is a place where you can get books. If you don't say, hey, this is a library anymore, Are kids going to go there to get books?
No. Who wants to go to the fucking detention center to fucking do anything? We have a phone call.
Exactly.
Let's get this phone call through.
Okay, let's do this.
All right, caller, you're calling from a 425 area code. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Jeff from the Sail at Sea.
Hey.
What up, Jeff?
So I was thinking about the neoliberalism in sports. That's a lot of private ownership. What do you think about, say, public ownership? Maybe like alumni could own the sports teams in college. How would we get there? How would that change the game? And I'll take my answer off there.
Thank you so much, JC. Thank you for calling. Thank you for supporting the show.
Absolutely.
What scares me about that is I think alumni do kind of own the school to some degree. I don't know if I want people that powerful making rules. If you're talking about public ownership of professional teams, that's a different conversation.
Well, this is the conversation stopper. The Big Four leagues in the United States will not allow that to happen. It's against league bylaws. The Green Bay Packers get a pass because they've always been publicly owned. Always. But you have to realize the controlling stake in the Green Bay Packers is owned by a very small consortium of very rich people. Okay? This isn't like European soccer where before, we'll say 15 years ago, like in the EPL, you had publicly owned teams the way like Wrexham is now, right? And Wrexham's the big thing because Rob McElhenney and the most handsome man on the planet, Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds,
did a whole reality show about it.
Yeah, and they bought it from the public. They bought it from the town of Wrexham. And the reason that Wrexham did it was because this used to be a good team, and it just fell on hard times. But what I think where McElhenney and Reynolds did it the right way was leaning into the community aspect of Wrexham, right? They rebuilt the grounds. They've moved up. Like their goal is to get into the EPL, which is nuts when you think about it, because like these two men they have money. They don't have EPL money. There's a reason that the Super League had out of the 12 teams, 8 of them were EPL teams, because the EPL has a stupid amount of capital behind the teams, right? Because most of them now are owned by like Saudi, oil conglomerates. So, the issue, JC, with that in the United States is that the NFL only allows the Packers to do it because they've always been. There's never been a private owner.
Grandfather.
But again, now league rules in the Big Four are every franchise has to have a primary private owner. So essentially, if you can get someone can buy 51% and then sell stock in the team, but they're still the controlling owner. They have the controlling stake. So you can never have a completely publicly owned team in the United States per the league rules.
Because they don't want that public ownership, huh?
No, they don't. I mean, and this is where a lot of people bitched about MLS when it first started, right? The league owned every franchise, every fucking one of them. And that didn't end until about 5 or 6 years ago when they allowed people to start buying into it. And honestly, what changed it was when they drew David Beckham.
Yes.
And part of getting him here was what? Offering him an expansion franchise. Cashed in with Inter Miami, which just signed Messi. And Messi in his first 2 games scored 2 goals and had an assist. So it's been a huge immediate payoff.
But isn't that how Messi got here too, with the whole like, hey, you can get a franchise too if you just play X amount of years? Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same deal, because what MLS wants to do is get to NFL level, which is 32 franchises and a literally coast to coast sport. So I would not be surprised to see, because soccer is proliferating greatly everywhere. I mean, dude, let's look at it. Your old backyard, Oakland, dude, the Roots, fucking phenomenal following in USL. Phenomenal following. I wake up ass early in the morning to watch them play noon fucking kickoff games because I love the Roots. Dude, their kid is amazing. Their following's amazing. Their freaking social media is amazing. And you know what's shitty? they're having trouble finding a place to play.
Oh, yeah. Oakland and the Bay Area is kind of a mess right now with places to play because not everywhere. Originally, what they were going to do with the Coliseum, one of the plans that I had saw was turn the Coliseum kind of what the Niners did when they left Kezar, make it a public park stadium thing.
Yeah.
And then build that new stadium by the water. And there's just been so much confusion behind that, and 2020 was a nightmare, and so the whole area by the Coliseum is frightening.
I mean, and this is the shitty part is Oakland, the Roots have probably one of the bigger followings in USL, and USL is a big league. It's over 60 teams, right? So it's the league under MLS. And the thing is, MLS is the one that's really fighting relegation and promotion in US soccer, right? But MLS wants the same privileges of all the other big leagues in the world without promotion relegation. Because what did MLS do? They went to private ownership with a lot of money behind each franchise. And like, let's say, how would Inter Miami and David Beckham fare if they got demoted down to USL and you saw a team like the Roots move up? Beckham, who's got a ton of money behind it, and the Roots, who are essentially publicly like sourced funding for a lot of their stuff, so it would be kind of nuts. But okay, let's see Ohio State.
So we have a super chat by JB. Thank you very much, JB. Yeah. Mac, before you sign off, where do you see Ohio State football over the next 5 to 10 years in the context of the shift taking place in college football? Will they stay competitive with the powerhouses of the SEC? I think so, because they can get some regional talent, but the last few quarterbacks that they've had, they even been from the state of Ohio?
They're from Cali. The last few quarterbacks have been from Cali. CJ Stroud,
Cali,
first round pick of Texas. Rancho Cucamonga, which is one of the funniest fucking names to say. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, it goes to show you how far and wide Ohio State recruiting is now. I think Ohio State's always going to be competitive, but as an Ohio State fan, and it's going to hurt me a little bit to say this, I don't think anybody can touch the top tier of the SEC right now. I don't think anybody can do it. Ohio State is an NFL factory. It really is. It puts kids in the next level, which I think is important, because whether we want to admit it or not, your college football quarterback is always going to be the top NIL earner. But you're going to have like safeties, corners, offensive linemen, and now running backs especially. They're not going to make the same amount. Right. And that's why, look at what CJ Stroud did for his offensive line. He bought them all Rolexes when he got his NIL.
That's deal. Crazy in college.
Yeah. But like you had already alluded to, Jason, you have 5-star talent that sits for 2 to 3 years to star for 1 year at Alabama.
If you get on the field.
Yeah. Right. And it's the same thing at Georgia now.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing at Georgia.
And God forbid and here's another thing, the transfer portal change. We haven't even mentioned that. The transfer portal change and the ease in which kids, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing at all, but the ease in which kids can transfer means that if you are a 5-star sitting on your ass for 3 years, waiting for your chance, like a school like Georgia, and you get the guy that was starting at USC before he hurt himself.
Well, look at Pat Narduzzi. He's the head coach at Pittsburgh. He lost a Buck Kiss Award winner, or not Buck Kiss, Biletnikoff winner, the best receiver in the country, to USC for transfer. Keep in mind, this dude already got his bachelor's degree. Is going to be working on his master's at USC. So this kid isn't just a little aspect. That's part of it, right? But he's going to work on his master's degree. That says a lot. This was like how transfers used to be. You could freely transfer with no punishment, with no sitting out a year, if you got your bachelor's and then transferred to go get work on your master's at another school. Think Russell Westbrook, case in point, right? Went from NC State to Wisconsin, got his master's degree. People talk shit about Russell Westbrook all day long, got his master's degree. People talk shit about Richard Sherman. Dude had his master's in fucking 3.5 years at Stanford. That's a smart motherfucker is what he is. And it used to piss me off when people would sit there and just bag on Richard Sherman about like, typical white supremacist shit. Like, oh, look at all the shit he talks. He's just a thug. Yeah, he's a thug. He's a thug with a master's degree, dude, from Stanford. Like, bro.
Yeah, he's not very frightening. He's just, he's just black.
Yeah, but like this dude transferred from Pittsburgh to USC, and USC is a rough academic school. He's a Biletnikoff winner. Obviously, he's won the best receiver in the fucking country last year, and I don't blame him. Right, for transferring to have more of an academic challenge, 1, and 2, have more of a sports challenge, because like USC doesn't just put stiffs up in front of them. They don't. Their non-conference schedule is rough, right? And they do it that way for a reason, because honestly, the rest of the Pac-12 is not stacked the way it used to be.
Well, USC, Caleb Williams is one of the best quarterback prospects I've seen in the last 15 years.
And I think he's going to fucking destroy the NFL when he gets in there.
The 2 that came out are cute, but Caleb Williams is him and the kid. And I told you about this. I want this on the record. I told Mac about this, and he wanted to treat me like I was full of shit. Who's the kid? Penix Jr. Penix Jr. at UW?
Washington.
Oh, my. I remember seeing him at Indiana, and I was like, there's something about this kid, because he's playing his ass off at this super mid-tier school. He went to Washington. My goodness.
Oh, he balled out.
I love watching him and Caleb Williams. There's some of the two quarterbacks I love watching for different reasons. Penix Jr. to me is a more polished Byron Leftwich.
Well, I think the biggest thing with Penix is he's going to get knocked for playing for Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer makes a lot of okay quarterbacks look really good, and he's the guy who turned around Tedford's mess at Fresno State. Yeah, so like I think he'll take those knocks going into the draft next year, and it's also the fact that he's a 6-year senior. I think they're gonna hold that against him, and because he missed 3 years to injury when he was at Indiana.
Because he was getting pummeled.
Oh, dude, and and that's the thing. They were big ones too. I think there were 2 ACL injuries and like 1 rotator cuff injury. So like
much like Byron Leftwich, he got pummeled early on in his college career. I'm looking at him, and I'm telling you, Caleb Williams, those are 2 young dudes that I'm really excited to see what they do. I don't know how I feel about CJ Stroud, and I've voiced my opinion about Ohio State quarterbacks before. Those guys just have such big windows to throw to.
If I didn't love you so much, I'd fight you over this.
I would like to see. I feel like CJ Stroud. He seems like a good kid. I teared up a little bit when his family read the thing when he got drafted.
You can give me shit about Justin Fields, because I think, like you said, the big window really benefited Fields when he was there. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, this was a more run heavy offense when Fields was there, because he's phenomenal on his feet. The guy can make anybody miss, right? And then he gets to Chicago, where the offensive line is what I would call ass, and the receivers are what I would call more ass. And he has no ball or anybody to throw it to. Chicago's under a little better talent base now, like going into this season, right? But CJ Stroud, right? Pass heavy offense.
Yes.
Very pass heavy.
Yes.
And that's because, and I get into this with Ohio State fans all the time. And if there's Ohio State fans in chat, I don't give a shit about your comments right now. Like, Ohio State fans shit on him all the time for not running the ball. He didn't play that game in high school. That's not his game now, at Ohio State. And it certainly isn't it in Houston.
Well, let's say this. Let's say this for the show so they understand this is a black show. Every quarterback that is colored is not a runner.
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to probably the most well-known one, Jason. Warren fucking Moon.
Mm-hmm. Not a runner.
The man who literally owns the record for most passing yards as a professional football player between his time in Canada and the NFL. And when he got drafted out of Washington, what did they fucking tell him? We're switching you.
Yep.
And then our man Warren Moon, the Nubian god he is, took his ass to Edmonton, Canada, one of the whitest fucking places on the planet, and played 6 years there before getting his chance to go to Houston.
And played too many years in the NFL. But not,
well, I mean, towards the end, yes. I'm going to tell you right now, Jason, the reason that he hung out as long as he did was because there was a horrible shortage of quarterbacks. Horrible. Because you got to think, he's playing in the run and shoot, right? Late 80s, early 90s. And then we saw the game start to pivot in about the mid 90s where, Troy Aikman was an option quarterback. People forget that. Was an option quarterback. And Troy Aikman's throwing for 3,500 yards a year. Right? We saw the game shift. And there's not enough quarterbacks who can actually throw the football into a tight window to these receivers who are getting more physical, taller.
And he's playing with, when Moon comes into the league, receivers are still 5'10", 5'11", maybe 6 feet. Remember, Jerry Rice is only like 6 feet. And he was playing with guys even shorter than that. For the run and shoot.
Absolutely. You got to remember, Webster Slaughter, one of the best Browns receivers.
Yes. 5'8".
Moves to Houston, 5'9", 175. Moves to Houston and just starts balling out. Right? Because Warren Moon's in there throwing fucking dimes to him. Because Warren Moon could close his eyes, hold his breath, and drop a 60-yard pass right into your hands. No,
that's the exact guy you want to, like Kurt Warner, right? This is the guy you want to go, okay, once you hit your back foot, let it go. Oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And I understand. Someone brought up a really good point. I was watching one of the football podcasts is actually pretty good when they talk about quarterbacks. They always say, when you talk about a guy that sucks, you don't understand progressions. You don't understand verbiage that this person may not be getting used to. It could be totally different, which is literally like learning a language when you have to learn.
Oh, absolutely.
Verbiage for these coaches.
Absolutely. Especially when you're going from college to the pros.
Oh,
even though the game, the pro game has changed and has kind of completely embraced the spread, right? The verbiage is much, much different from the college game to the pros.
So complex. These coaches want it to be so complex.
And before we go on, Jason, JB Aikman started out at OU under Barry Switzer and transferred to UCLA.
That's why he has that accent. So he's not from California.
Fuck
from Oklahoma. Listen to him talk.
No, but you're absolutely right, Jason. The verbiage changes, and then honestly, especially now where you have the head coach doing the reads for a lot of these quarterbacks in the spread. So when these kids get drafted and move up to the pros, and they're now the read's on you, dude. It's on you completely because the league rules in the NFL are I can call your play into your headset. I can't do the read for you. And the NFL monitors all that radio traffic. So go ahead and be the coach that does the read for your quarterback. 15-yard penalty off the bat. Right? So these kids are now in the position where they have to make those reads. They have to learn this new verbiage. And like you said, they're making adjustments to delivery. They're making adjustments to release point. And like you said, they're learning to throw the ball off their back foot. Finally. Because how many of these college quarterbacks are able to just kind of like jump up in the air, huck it 40 yards downfield? Because you have guys like Caleb Williams playing, and I don't mean to like bag on a team like this, but like Texas State, like
it's not fair. That kick is behind his back passes like Sammy Baugh. When you think about reads, also you have to think about, does the wide receiver know how to get off certain coverages? So let's just say the quarterback and wide, when people say like are on the same page, it's beyond just play calling. It's I'm getting a certain press coverage here, so I'm going to take this, like option routes. That's what all that shit means. That means I'm supposed to react to this coverage in a certain way, and you have to know that. If you guys aren't on the same page, if he's missing reads, if he doesn't understand the coverage that you're in, if he doesn't understand coverages, which sometimes you don't have to do in college, because that's why you see if you guys watch college football what's the first thing you see the quarterback do when he gets to the line of scrimmage? Because it's the same thing in college. Your microphone's cut off. He looks over because they're telling him the reads.
Yep.
He counts.
Yeah. I mean,
he's counting to see right.
When do you guys see the backup quarterback holding up that quartered sign and then pointing to one quarter of it? That's the coverage they're in. And it's some goofy picture. Like I remember USC had a picture of just hot actors. It was literally Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling, Brad Pitt, and like Clive Owens. And Lincoln Riley's like, yeah, we change it every week, but like Ryan Reynolds was like a soft cover too. You know, Ryan Gosling was a nickel look. You know, like they would. That's when you see the signs come up. You know, like that's
like read. Okay, this is the coverage. This is and now you know your read. The receivers now know the coverage, so everybody knows what to do. In the NFL, it's a different game. So it's like, okay. Yeah. I have to look and see how deep safeties are. I have to look at middle linebacker coverage because that's what you're going through in the film room. That's what you're going through in the pregame stuff. You're going, okay, when you see the middle linebacker come here and the safety comes down here, that means they're going to run this defense. You know, offensive linemen have to know to call their blocking coverages as well, because defensive players do what's called a stunt, where they don't just run at the guy in front of them. They go around and go, we're going to go this way and that way. We're going to confuse them so we can get an open lane to the quarterback. There's so much going on that everyone has to know their assignment, and the quarterback, if you will, has to orchestrate that. And this is where, for a person like me, and it partially is because I'm a Bronco fan, because I hated him when he was with the Colts, but I appreciate someone like Peyton Manning, because the greatness of Peyton Manning, and this is where I love football, the chess match of it all. Later in his career, when he's audibling from a pass to a run to get 2 yards, he saved the sack. That's a loss of 5.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You know what the greatness of Peyton Manning in Indianapolis was him and Jeff Saturday, his center. Mm-hmm. And like, if anybody watches professional football, I want you to do this on Thursday because we have the Hall of Fame game coming up. Yeah, right. You'll notice the other 4 linemen are set. They are not allowed to move, but the center's allowed to, because he makes those calls at the offensive line, and he's allowed to turn around and talk to the QB, right? And Jeff Saturday and Peyton Manning, those two, and say what you want about Jeff Saturday as like a head coach or a talking head on ESPN, because when Jeff Saturday was the interim coach for the Colts, shit show, absolute shit show.
Yes.
Right. Talking head on ESPN, a little better than his head coaching shit, but okay. Right. But him and Manning, 2 of the smartest people at their position together, were able to pick apart any defense they wanted, any one of them. Saturday could literally get the ball, rotate in his hands, get set, look up, already has the read down, over the shoulder. Manning made it. They nod, and then ball snapped. You know, like fucking, and it just nuts.
And what's crazy is these young kids are learning this at high school level.
Oh, dude, I've seen. We've got a couple good like high school football teams around Fayetteville.
I believe it.
And they're learning it in middle school.
Jesus.
So when they get their freshman year, they're just fed into the system, and they're making reads at the line of scrimmage. Good, you know, you want them to in college, you know, but like we've seen a huge influx of kids from Fayetteville going into the pros in the last 10 years because they're being prepped from like 8th grade on. And the game changes a little bit in college, but that's something they could fall back on when they make it to the next level. You know, it's absolutely nuts, you know, and I think that goes back to like what we were talking about with like Mahomes. Dad was a professional athlete. He goes into like the American like camp system, you know, where he's just going to be a quarterback. You know,
since
like
he's 12.
Yeah. You know, and then what kills me is when people look at his recruitment, right, into college, and they're like, well, he went to Texas Tech. Like, Jason, you and I can throw for fucking 4,000 yards in Texas Tech offense.
A lot of guys threw for 4,000 yards at Texas Tech.
Right? or June Jones offense. Like, look, fucking Colt Brennan threw for over 5,000 yards that year they played fucking Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
You leave the name of the late Colt Brennan out of your mouth.
I love Colt Brennan, and I love those Hawaii teams.
I wish Colt Brennan. Can we have a moment of silence for Colt Brennan? It's like, it's real talk.
Yeah.
So that kid had a rough go. Speaking of Colorado, he was at Colorado.
Yeah.
Some weird stuff happened with him. He went to Saddleback Community College for a minute, which is here in Orange County, or above me in California, and goes to Hawaii, and Hawaii just wrecks shit for that season. I still, June Jones, you bring a fullback in there. I think you guys beat Georgia.
Yeah. Or had a capable tight end that you can slide in for short yardage.
They just got no one's gonna block me.
Yeah, and I hate that a guy like Colt Brennan, who especially before he passed, was really open and honest about like substance abuse, and telling kids like, hey, the NFL, I mean, it's changed now, but when he was in the league, it was only 53 players on an active roster. He's like, do not spend those checks like it's going out of style. He's like, because that's what I did, because I had issues with drugs. And he's like, now, like, 2 years before he passed, he was living with his parents. And he's like, do you know how embarrassing that is for a 40-year-old man to live with your parents? And having voices like that to kind of team up with, like you said, these rookies that are more, attuned to NIL and branding and being smarter with their money. I think those are two great things, because we don't have to see people like Earl Campbell, at 45 years old using a walker.
No,
because his knees are shot and he's not getting shit from his NFL pension.
No. And I don't think I really feel like those players are gone. Tom Brady's the future.
Well, I mean, dude, honestly, like, if we can talk about hot labor summer real quick,
please.
People like to point out the Teamsters being the most powerful union in the United States. No, it's not. It most certainly is not. That would be the Major League Baseball Players Association and the NFL Players Association. Yep. Two most powerful unions in this country, right? Teamsters got some pull, and I fucking love them for it. But the two most powerful unions represent professional athletes. And what I love about what, especially in the last collective bargaining agreement, what the NFLPA did was say, listen, Earl Campbell should not be living off $400 a month, which is what his pension was. They're like, dude, we make millions now. Not as much as even they should. I still believe there needs to be more guaranteed money in NFL contracts.
Of course.
Right? But these men went to the bargaining table knowing they would lose money to argue that Earl Campbell and those guys from like the 70s into the early 80s deserve more along lines of $4,000 a month. And that's what they got. And that was one of the big sticking points with Goodell and his negotiating team. He's like, why should we be spending money on these guys? They're not relevant to the game anymore. But these players who never saw Earl Campbell fucking punish people running a football said Earl Campbell deserves better. Lynn Swann deserves better. Night Train, like all these old players, they deserve better. And they made part of their, and they got it, which is great.
I mean, these are guys that played at a time when you had to have another job. There was people on your team with multiple jobs.
And the shitty part is the NFLPA really didn't even make a big dent, honestly, until after the USFL died. When that league died, and a lot of those players like Steve Young, Reggie White, Flutie, Herschel Walker, when they made the transition over to the NFL and said, hey, dude, I was making millions, and that's what I want. And the owners were like, yeah, god damn, we got to start paying these assholes now. Like that's exactly what they did.
That's exactly what happened.
Right. And it took the USFL essentially financially destroying their league, in addition to the stupid lawsuit that Trump spearheaded to get them to play fall football rather than stay in the spring. It destroyed the US. It was great for the NFL. it showed them like you had to pay these players a commensurate amount for what they're bringing to the table. And as the NFL exploded in popularity, surpassing baseball, far surpassing baseball, I think at this point. And then the NBA far surpassing MLB at this point,
Oh yeah.
It shows. And I think that's important. Again, it goes back into the kind of that bread and circus thing that you and I've talked about a lot. They want, these municipalities, these states, the federal government even wants, because I mean, during the last NFL lockout, the federal government got involved in negotiations.
You can't shut down.
Yeah, don't do that. We need you up and running, right? And that's the circus part of all this. They want the entertainment aspect out. And honestly, when we look at the rail worker strike, which I know is part of the National Labor Relations Act of 1923, where rail workers aren't allowed to go on strike. But especially when we're seeing UPS pop up, in the last couple of weeks before today, like today was their strike date before they came to their agreement. This was going to involve the shipping of food, the shipping of, hygiene items. This was going to involve people's Amazon shipments. And the federal government immediately went to UPS and they're like, dude, you better fucking give them whatever they want, because if this shit stops, it's going to look like Florida right now. And I don't know if you've seen what DeSantis has done with chasing out migrant workers out of the state. Food's not being picked. Food's not being shipped.
It didn't work out well for the South when they did that.
Nope.
Was it 5-6 years ago? Maybe even 10 years ago, when they said we're going to kick out all the migrant workers and replace them with incarcerated people.
Oh yeah,
formerly incarcerated. No.
I mean, it's like, I wish we could. I really think, and this is the only bit of optimism that I have in my life, is the fact that we're seeing a huge upturn in labor movement. And I think that's beyond important. We're seeing unions formed in places where, dude, even 5 years ago, you would never see them formed, and I don't think that is going to be able to be bottled up. But what I do see is the federal government amending the NLRA interfere with people's ability to form large organizations, like say the Teamsters.
That's what seems scary. Like no one is tripping too hard on Starbucks because Starbucks isn't crying.
No,
people are still buying coffee.
Yeah, and let's face it, Starbucks United, which I think has done great grassroots movement in the labor movement. To get, I think they're at like 25,000 members. But even then, like that is a drop in the bucket when you look at the service industry as a whole.
Collectively bargaining when you have like private ownership and then there's corporate ownership. It's a little. Starbucks is complex, so is McDonald's to a certain degree, but seeing these things happen does give me a little bit of hope. Having people understand the power of labor, like you hope that the Hollywood, and we're going to get into this tomorrow on the show, the Hollywood strikes open people's eyes to a certain degree, but back to the gamification of everything, the fact that I'm in control of every aspect of my life. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it because I want to do it. Having that with film, Hollywood didn't pay attention to the music industry when they were going through sampling, when they were going through iTunes. Hollywood was always like, that's a you people problem. And not learning those lessons. Like, I was having a conversation with someone and we were talking about how auto-tune changed so many different types of music where you didn't need to have a certain kind of singer. We've done a couple shows on house music, and just take that for example, dance music.
Yeah.
For dance music, you always had to have this over-the-top gospel voice that was very, very powerful in the front of the song, even if it was just the hook. By the time you get auto-tune, you don't need that voice anymore. And that voice goes by the wayside. That means all those people that did that don't get paid.
Yeah.
It means they're done. You know, there's a reason why you don't have to hear Martha Wash's voice anymore. And bigger than that was when sampling comes into play. And now I can sample every instrument, and sampling technology gets a lot better, and computer recording, digital recording gets a lot better. You don't need to have reel-to-reels anymore. Now you've eliminated the need to have so many studio musicians. So for a long time, music has been suffering to a certain degree through technological advancements. And Hollywood hasn't had that same level of fall off like the music industry has, especially again when you have auto-tune sampling and then the ability to not pay for music anymore, and music just kind of becoming this ubiquitous thing that
I'm gonna ask you this question, Jason, because again, you are more well versed in the music industry, right? Like, you know it, you lived it. But do you think that is the case because Hollywood studios, no matter what people like to say, like, oh, Hollywood's all like liberal, but the studios themselves are stupid conservative.
Yeah, they're finance guys.
Yeah, they don't change easy. Now, do you think that they didn't kind of like, I guess, read the writing on the wall?
The tea leaves.
Yeah.
They're different industries, and I don't think they overlap to the point where they're going to learn from one another. Like, first of all these industries, it takes them a while to correct and figure out the course. Music right now has figured it out. You're
preaching the choir. I spent 16 years in the DOD. Right? Like,
it takes them for 20 years in Afghanistan. Trillions, hundreds of thousands of dead people, if not millions.
Jason, it took him 15 years to take sexual assault out of the unit commander's hands and put it to an actual attorney. Like, that just happened.
We just saw, after we had a show, 3 months after we did a show about the fact that you can have underage women in military bases.
Oh yeah.
We just saw it in San Diego. They got a 14-year-old young girl out of a military base. So no, I get it. The movement on that stuff, it takes forever for people to move on it. And the music industry, it always boils down to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
No one really cares about artists. Just like players, nobody cares about. As long as the dollars and cents are still coming in. And when those dollars and cents are not coming in the way that they were coming in before, then people start to get mad. Like, when you hear artists complain now, like, I'll be, even though this isn't a music show, I'll say this and people probably get mad at me. I hate hearing people whine about the payouts they get from Spotify and Pandora, mainly because most of us were never going to be on radio. Spotify and Pandora, I can honestly say, was a way that I could get my music heard without radio, because it was such a fucking, you had to be anointed to be on radio. Bands like Metallica didn't get on radio for the first like 8 to 9 years of their career.
Yeah.
So, even hip hop artists like we love, like De La Soul, they weren't on commercial radio until
no. Dude, you were literally buying their CD out of a trunk of a car until what?
You know what I mean? Yeah, like this stuff didn't really break open for certain artists to get on radio. So to be able to have any way for people to hear my music in different parts, for me, the big thing was an application called SoundCloud.
Yeah.
We got on SoundCloud kind of early on. My band I did with my ex LaFin, and we were actually interacting with artists from around the world, where you could put demo stuff up and say, I'm working this out. And people would actually leave you comments. Oh, I like that part right there. You should bring this out more. You should do this. And it was like this great little community. It's not that anymore. But we could get our music out in a way that we couldn't get it out before. And then we had to tour. But Spotify would be like an extra little check. We got more money from our performance royalties than we ever got from our Spotify payouts, but we didn't really trip off that, because you can hear my record now. If you didn't buy it at the show, you'd be like, oh dude, are you on Pandora or Spotify? Yep. And people can hear you. So when people whine, it's either artists that used to get massively large payouts with terrestrial radio. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars they were getting. So you didn't even have to tour. If you dropped a hot song, you got paid. If you wrote it too, you got paid.
Yeah, I mean, dude, look at Alice in Chains, that last album. They didn't tour to support it because Lane Staley was, became a hermit and lived in his condo and just did drugs. But they made a ton of money off that album.
Because you had so many radio stations playing you, over and over and over again. And so I don't love the streaming platforms. Like I miss buying music, but for us smaller artists, that shit helps.
Yeah, I mean,
it helps.
I think the biggest thing I have with like the music streaming is like getting to talk to Max Collins, the lead singer, Eve Six, a couple of times. Like they signed their first record deal when they were 17. So Sony still owns their first 2 records.
Mm-hmm.
So they get like 1 cent every play off Spotify. And let's face it, Eve Six is not what you would call a super popular band anymore. Right. But like, I love that, the members at Eve Six have kind of come to terms with who they are now, especially leaning into their leftism, which I think is fucking great.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an alt rock Woody Guthrie kind of vibe from them now, which is awesome. But like I feel bad, especially like when you consider some of these bands that were wildly popular in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, that maybe didn't have the longevity of, say, Metallica. Like you pointed out when we did the Champagne time was on, and you're like, dude, they've been doing this for 40 years,
40 years. Yeah.
Right? Like they don't have to have anybody open for them. And I sat there and was like, why did I ask Jason this fucking question? But like Eve Six, they had a great 4-year window and put out 2 great albums during that time, right? But they signed away every right they had to their music because they were like, I'm going to be big, I'm going to have this longevity, and it didn't happen that way. So like I really think, and we got into this like last time again in the Champagne Room, is that we're seeing artists just getting totally ripped off now.
Yeah.
Like the one dude, the one dude who played the prison guard in Orange Is the New Black, the one that knocked up the one woman, he was like, dude, I worked throughout the whole thing at a regular job because we didn't get paid anything. And then he put his residual checks up and it's like 16 cents an episode. And it's like streaming gave so much of the negotiated power between writers and actors back to movie studios and the companies, that now that they're trying to claw some of that back, you have people like Bob Iger, at Disney, that's crying poor,
But he's also telling them to go F themselves. And back to the whole, like, you didn't learn your lesson with music streaming's been going on for over a decade. Movie streaming probably about the same time.
Give or take, right?
Yeah. But no one saw that writing on the wall because they figured there were such different industries. And movie streaming and music streaming is so different, right? Like, again, Jason Miles, the nobody musician, Spotify is great. But at some point, Spotify is going to say, we can't store this music that no one's listening to.
Yeah.
If you have less than, 1 million followers, we think you're a loser. So even if you're a band that's actually sold hundreds of thousands of records, but you don't have millions of followers, the streaming services look at you as a loss. You are taking up storage space in their massive server, library. And so physical mediums mean a little bit more to me. And I think what's going to happen, and this is just my very sad, as some people that watch the show call me the black pill N-word, very sad, very sad take is that I think that people that actually create, like writing a script and they're going to actually direct stuff, that's going to be like vinyl.
Yeah. The thing is, Jason, I think you're right, man.
People, it's not, to me, it's not about the studios. It's about the people. And I learned it with music. If you do something that someone thinks is valuable, they will follow you. They will pay for it. If JB goes to a show and JB digs the band that he saw at the show, he will buy that band's shirt. He might buy that band's music. He may never fucking listen to the music. He may clean the house in the shirt. But those two purchases made sure that that band's going to come back to that city. Maybe JB sees him again. But that relationship is the only thing that kept me on the road for those years, playing 100 and some shows a year. Is I recorded a record for this tour. I'm going to go out and hopefully they buy the new design of the same thing that I put out, because nothing else is going to, there's no record label giving me that much money. My friends, I was talking to a friend of mine recently. He was in a band that you probably know called Under Oath for a little bit. He was in a band called The Almost for a while. And I was trying to get him on, but he was like, Jay, I just don't want to talk about this shit anymore. But they had went out on tour when he was with The Almost and made gobs of money. And they came back with like $2,500 because you have so many expenses if you want to be big. So the Eve 6 point, I'll just wrap up quick. To the Eve 6 point, this isn't to shit on them at all.
Yeah.
If you want to be big, either you're going to like commit some crazy crime in 2023 and do a record from jail about how you shot somebody and murdered your mom, or you're going to sign with someone that has the ability to make you that big. Kind of like we were talking about, like Marcus was talking about with Prince.
Yeah.
I get his frustration as someone that cannot play the music that he recorded, wrote, composed, because I don't own it. I get that frustration, but I also know that it's like, dude, you wouldn't have been Prince had it not been, for these people putting a certain amount of money and making you the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like those things do work hand in hand, and it comes at a cost. And that's the constant fight when you do this shit seriously. If you want to be an actor, if you want to be a musician, if you want to write, it's the constant fight of how serious do I want to be with this shit?
When I was boxing, I did 10 fights as a pro, and I was a short dude, much lighter than I was, than I am now. I fought at middleweight. I fought at 160. And my last fight, I was televised, and I got $40,000 for it. And I walked away with $6,000.
Ooh, because of training expenses.
After taxes, paying my cut man, my trainer, paying expenses for like training space, I walked away with $6,000. And I won this fight, right? But like, I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but I have scar tissue just all throughout my forehead. It's almost like fucking like flat. Because I was so short and I would just take jabs to the forehead. Right. And I had both my eyelids busted up, or my forehead busted above both eyebrows. And I've got like gauze packed in it. I got, pressure on it so I don't have blood leaking into my face. And I looked at my trainer, and this had set me up to go fight for a regional belt, which, like, if you don't boxing, you get a regional belt, you're only a couple of fights away from fighting one of the four, one of the four big belts.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my trainer and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, man. Like, I can't make the cut down to 140, which is where most people my height fight at, because I'm just a stocky fuck. Like, I hadn't weighed 140 pounds since I was like in fucking, sixth grade. Yeah, and like, I'm in the Army too, so I can't just dedicate my life to training for fights, And he was like, dude, I was getting ready to talk to you about this because like you're winning fights. And I finished 8-2 as a pro, which isn't bad.
No.
I got the shit kicked out of me by Kelly Pavlik, who was middleweight champion of the world as an amateur. Like, dude just, was an amazing boxer. And the fact that I got to step in the ring with him is enough to say getting my face caved in for, 6 years was worth it. But like, I was going to talk to you about this. Like, we either start making the cut to 140, which I was like, not going to happen. Not ever going to fucking happen. I like steaks. I like fucking potatoes. I like rice. I'm really not into just eating salads every meal to get down to like 140 and then try and maintain it. Like, that's not going to happen. So like, I hung it up after that point, man. And I caught hell because like I was on I was on the opener for network TV, and they were like, I had a look, I have tattoos and all this shit. And this is before like everybody like was just covered in tattoos as boxers, so they're like, and I'm a white dude in a sport that's predominantly populated by Asian and black fighters. So like, of course, networks are like, yeah, let's get the fucking white dude in there, man. Like, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't fucking do it. I physically cannot do this. Like my nose has been broken like fucking, dude, Jason, I'm not even kidding, about a dozen times. I've had my orbital broke twice. Like I said, my forehead is as smooth as like a conservative's brain at this point. And it's just like, this isn't worth it, man. I'm never going to be on the level of like Bernard Hopkins. I'm never going to be on the level of Kelly Pavlik. Hell, I'm not even going to be on the level of Chris Eubank. And if you don't know who that is, he's living off his daddy's fucking name. He's a UK fighter, but his dad was a phenomenal fucking boxing champ. This dude is he picks and chooses opponents. All the big fighters he fights, he gets fucking destroyed, but he still thinks he's like fucking God's greatest gift to fucking middleweight boxing. And it's like, bro, you step in the ring with Canelo, you're going to like, that's it, but like, I'm never going to be this dude. So I was just like, I'm fucking done, man. Like I'm tired. Like training for a fight, being in the military at the same time was absolutely fucking miserable. But like I get it. Like when you see $40,000, you're like, holy fuck, that's more than what I make in a year in the Army.
Yeah.
And you walk away with 6, you're just like,
either you're going to go like this. Feel me on this. Either you're going to go, holy shit, if I do that 5 more times, I'll have, my purse will get bigger each time. Or you start bitching about the 6 and you'll be out of the business. Like you said, you'll be 8-2 and be like, it's not worth it. I know so many people that never made money because if you have a hit record, I don't care what genre of music you're in, if you have a hit record that you didn't pay for, you better have a hit the next record, because you haven't broke even yet. And the money you made from that first record will be paying for whatever you're doing on the second record, which they're going to increase the budget even more. It's kind of like going, if I just win the lottery, you just keep buying lottery tickets, trying to get out of this big ass hole.
Especially if you're on a big record label and they do the advance, like you have to pay the advance back.
You got, and the way you pay it back it's so fucked up. When I was talking to my buddy, it was the internet did one of those things. I'm having this phone call with my buddy, and this video comes up from when we were hanging out on tour. It showed up on YouTube. And one of the nights, they were bitching about money. And they were bitching about, have you fucking broke even? Have we broken? How much money we really make? We don't know. Because when you're on the road, you're getting a per diem.
Yeah.
Again, I know cats that it was at the end of the night, you got some cash, and that's how you did it for years. And then one day you got so much cash, you was like, wait a minute, I think I just paid out everybody $100,000. We have $800,000 in cash that we've fucking collected in this motherfucking, RV or whatever. Oh shit. And life changes. You probably get a bigger deal. You're profitable. I got to get you out more. That costs money. You can't go out the same way you went out when you did that thing and you were making that cash. Now you got to have a lighting guy. When I met Under Oath, they had a lighting guy that was making so many thousand a week. They had a filmography crew that was making so many thousand a week. They had a tour manager, had a merch guy. He was making so many thousands a week. They had techs. So you don't know what you're hemorrhaging because you're getting a per diem. Every place you play is full. The merch is selling like crazy. You ask, hey, what did we do last night? Oh, we did 30,000 in shirts and bullshit. But you don't know that there's a merch fee that is taking 35% of that off the top. And by the time you get home, you're like, well, how much did we gross? $5 million. What are we getting each? Each of you getting $5,000. I was just out for 8 weeks. And you know what? Don't get comfortable. We just booked you a month in Europe. Then you got to go do Japan and Southeast Asia for another month. Come home for a week. Then you'll do South America because it's summer for them.
Yep.
You know, and that's your life. And it's not like complaining about it. It's just the reality. But the reality is you're just not making the money people think you are making. There's these young girls. It's a metal band. I dig them so much. They're so badass. And they were touring with Machine Head this last spring. And a tornado hit where they were. I think they were in your old neck of the woods. I think they were in Ohio or Michigan. And
sounds about right. God's trying to smite both those states.
The only band, Mac, the tornado grabbed their RV, flung it into the venue. One person died.
God damn.
And their RV and their shit gets destroyed. They, of course, don't know what they're going to do. Insurance doesn't work the way everybody thinks insurance works. Even, and
this is America. Insurance doesn't work at all.
Sucks, right?
Yeah.
So they go, we got a crowdfund, and all the headliners on the tour, of course, they're devastated by this. They're like, A, they have to get into a vehicle because this is how they eat. B, they have to replace shit. They have to pay back the company for the RV that they got destroyed, even though it wasn't their fault. And so the crowdfunding, they got money over. They only needed, I forget how much they needed, but they got more than they needed. And the fans shit on them. The same people that donated, because in people's minds, they believed that these young kids are making tens of thousands of dollars a night because they think, well, I'm in my shitty band in shitty band town X, and we made like $100, so they got to be making like 5,000.
Oh
nope.
My God, dude.
We were on tour with Godflesh playing big ass rooms. We got $100. We got $100 every night. Not $1,000. We got $100. That $100 was a game changer for the rest of my life. I got put in magazines that never would have gave a shit about me before. I got told I created a genre of music by Pitchfork. Changed my life. $100. $100. You think they're making that much more? They're not making that much more than $100.
No, man. I mean, and let's fucking face it, dude. Like, and this goes into like, this is a whole other discussion about like toxic fandom, which we see a lot in sports, getting back to like the fantasy aspect, right? Like, dude, this Colorado thing, moving back to the Big 12. I get on Twitter and I see all this shit. And, Colorado fans are just like fucking mad talking shit to everybody. And I was like, hey, man, I'm not trying to be a dickhead here. Your team hasn't been relevant since like 1992 when Eric Bieniemy was still running the ball for the Buffalo.
95.
Okay, yeah, 95.
95, right?
Yeah,
Rashawn Salam. Yeah.
Fucking Cordell Stewart was the fucking quarterback, right?
Michael Westbrook. Yeah.
Like you haven't been relevant since then. So why would you go into spaces where you're going to get shit on? And you will, because that's how sports fans are, right? Cool. And just run your fucking mouths. I was like, I'm a person that can handle themselves physically, right? I can do that. And I'm now, but I got my boxing chops and some old man strength to go behind it. And like, I'm okay, right? But you know what I still don't do? I don't go actively looking to fight anybody. And if anything, I deflect, I fucking, de-escalate. I'm not in the mood for any of this shit anymore. I will be 42 years old this year, Jason, and I'm not in the mood to get hit in the face because I might win that fight, but I will be in my bed for 2 days because I don't react well to bruising in the face anymore, right? But like, dude, why are you when all these assholes get on Twitter? And it could be sports, it could be comic books, which I'm a huge comic book fan, and comic book fans are the absolute fucking worst people in the.
Yep.
Even more than fucking Star Wars or any of the other like fandoms, right? But why do you actively go out looking to start shit? What is the point? just be a fan of what you're
You
into,
know what?
man.
Because you can. Because you can. And I don't say that out of pride.
You know what else? You know what else I could do? I can do whatever the fuck I want, man. I'm a white veteran in America. It's like me, short of me, like doing something absolutely awful, I can do it and probably get away with it.
It's sad, Mac. Do you feel? And I felt so bad when I saw. So one of the people in this band, the singer, documents her life, maybe a little too much, but okay. I get it. Yeah. I get it. This is what you have to do to be relevant in 2023.
It's part of that branding thing, man. It's part of that branding.
Part of the branding. And they are attractive young ladies. She is a fan of Beyonce, even though they do this crazy metal stuff. And she was like, our tour ended and Beyonce happens to be in town. Now they got the funding so they can finish the tour and everything, whatever. And the people that donated were like, how dare you have fun? I didn't pay for you to have fun.
Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
I'm like, are you? So they took the money, the overage that they got, and they donated it to some charities in their native Brazil. Because they're like, we're tired of you guys saying that we're this and we're that and we're this and we're that. We're donating this overage. They had to show the breakdown. I'm like, you don't have to show anything. If you donate to someone because you support them, you support them.
Yeah. I mean, dude, isn't that like the big thing on the left too? Like, God forbid, if you organize or do anything good in your community and you're like, you know what, I'm taking a break so I can go to the bar with my friends. Mm-hmm. How dare you enjoy yourself when we're going through this climate crisis? Workers are being exploited.
Yeah.
Hey, man, shit's going to be tomorrow when I wake up. Can I take one fucking night to just go enjoy myself with the people I care about and enrich my life and give me the energy and the fucking, you know, kind of that uplift I need sometimes? Because
the vow of poverty, the vow of leftist poverty. And maybe that's why people can't get into sports, because there is a certain opulent living to some of these athletes. And dude, I effing get it. But I didn't know to have certain beliefs, you have to have a vow of poverty. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, how do you want to get anything done with no money?
Thank you. It's just like when we were talking about Kaepernick and he was invited to be a guest editor and wrote the opening for a book where he came out and said that Black people will never be free under capitalism, and just outright said it. Came out as a leftist. Mm-hmm. And I'm still waiting on a response back from him and his people. I just want you to know that I did reach out like 3 times, haven't gotten anything back yet. But when he puts that out on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck it's called now, right? Mm-hmm. Dude, you had people that are like, I was a fan, but like, you're gonna be a leftist and have all these millions, like what? You can't come out and say that and then have all this money. And I'm like, dude, he hasn't played in fucking forever.
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he was smart with the money he made. And if you don't see what he does in the Bay Area, because he doesn't put cameras in front of him when he doesn't, you don't see the fucking foundations he's endowed. You don't see the work he's trying to do, trying to fight the San Francisco City Council on, you know, setting up actual shelters to get people off the street. So cops don't have to go and harass fucking homeless people just for existing, right? You don't see that because there's no cameras involved. Mm-hmm. But you're really going to give him shit when it takes, like you said, it takes money to do this. It takes money to open up shelters. It takes money to get doctors in there. It takes money to get the meds for detox. It takes money to do all that shit. And I'm sorry, we can sit here and say, well, there are millions of leftists in the United States. And there are.
Sure.
I won't argue that. But you know what a lot of us are doing? Working 2 jobs and barely keeping the fucking lights on. So when we donate, that $5 we donate, that's really all we got. And you're not going to make enough money to build a shelter getting $5 donations. You're just not going to do it, So, and I also bring this up. Marks had angles. That's all I'm going to say. Right?
Wait a minute. You deserve one of these. Sorry, we haven't done this in a while. I think you killed it on that one.
Here it comes!
Right? Like he did. He fucking had angles who funded all his writing, contributed to all his writing. Like Engels is as big as part of the foundation of what we call socialism and communism as Marx is. But
it doesn't look. Either you have rich people. I've watched a great video, and I hate this, and about rich people pretending to be poor. Like there's this art of poverty, and we used to see it when we were touring in like 2012. That van life shit was real hot. So places where we would like chill, we'd see like younger people there. We're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And it would be these like young kids, like, oh, van life. And they'd be taking pictures of their like pimped out van. And then we saw some sick, like we learned a lot from them. I'm not gonna lie, because they were building all kinds of stuff in their vans. And it was just this phase where they're like, oh, this is a cool thing to do. And we'll live in a van. Like, we guys are artists. Nope. We just want to live in a van.
Yeah.
And someone says Macklemore thrift store people. It's the same thing. And when we think about like athletics, we think everyone on a sports team is a millionaire because we hear the numbers. We don't think like, oh, every city they're in and country, they pay taxes in.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's so much like the music example. There's so many people in their pockets when their playing days are over. I knew multiple dudes that played enough years to get a pension in the NFL, but they don't have jobs. They've made more money at their regular jobs than they made in the league.
Yeah.
And it's a hard life because if you're a fringe player, you may not, and you're on a bad team that has constant coaching changes. A fringe player isn't going to be on the team when the new coach gets in because he's got his guys.
Roster spots 48 to 54 now because there's 54 roster spots with the 17th game, and the practice squad was expanded from 12 to 17. I believe it's 17. But 48 to 54, they're not going to be there, like you said. They won't. And that goes back to me.
Move your family.
Yeah.
Sorry, honey. We're moving again because I just got the call to go to, DC, play for the Redskins. Hopefully we make the team.
Yeah.
Oh, I made the team. Uh-oh, I didn't make the team, but I just got a call to go try out for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I really put a premium on the spring leagues. It gives those guys the chance to, one, play enough to get game tape, and then that game tape can potentially get them roster spot 1 to 47. To where that's life-changing money, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what kind of pisses me off about all these fucking football fans in the United States, where they shit on the USFL and the XFL. It's like, have you ever been roster spot 48 to 54? Or a guy who just wanted to play pro ball, maybe didn't excel in the classroom, went to a D2 school instead, and now you get a chance to go play pro ball. And then my buddies laughed at me when I told them, I pay the fucking money to stream professional football in Europe. Because, and the thing is, the highest paid player on those teams, Jason, make €1,000 a month.
Damn.
But they're getting game film. And a lot of them, the league rule is you can't have more than 4 American players on any team. Right? So these guys are all European playing American ball for dog shit money, right? But look at Jakob Myers. He was the fullback for the Patriots. German guy.
Yeah.
Got his start in Europe. Won a Super Bowl ring. I don't have a Super Bowl ring. That's rad as fuck. Made a couple bills when he was on the Pats, and then he went back home and he's on a coaching staff for I believe the Hamburg organization. But we should be supportive of these men and women that are literally putting everything they got into a sport, that are playing for our enjoyment as fans, right?
Because we're also talking about people that are done by 27.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that is a huge line going from playing in arenas, your favorite sport, to actually having to go into the fucking workforce, which I earned 2 college degrees, graduate with honors, and I'm unloading trucks at a fucking factory and delivering pizzas to keep my fucking lights on.
It's,
like
music is the same way too. There's so many people I know that made it big when they were young. Big is relative, but not that fuck you money where I don't have to ever work again. Why do you think Motley Crüe is still touring into their 60s?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Because they don't have enough money to retire on, or because their financial plan was like, look, you guys can stop if you want, but that merchandise ain't selling when y'all ain't out there on the road. You can't license stuff to, Harley Davidson when you're not out there on the road. So if you have the ability to do it forever, I mean, you probably will. But people that do something to get a little hit or something like that, and they're done by 25, 26, 27, it's insane. And it's a lot of these times these people are children. And we don't really look at young bands or young artists as children. We don't look at, I don't know, De La Soul as a child act because they were like 18 when they got signed or 17 when they got signed. But those are children. Those are kids. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They have no idea.
Freddie Adu was the first.
Was he 14 when he signed it?
14 when he signed with the DC MLS club. And because he didn't produce right out the gate, because he's 14 years old playing in a league with,
adults.
Yeah. He gets shit on, goes to Europe and has a good career. Like it's ridiculous the amount of just like stress that we place on these people that we want to watch, right? That we supposedly support, but goddamn, a guy blows out his knee, can't produce the rest of the season tanks. Baker Mayfield case in point, right? Gets the Browns to the fucking playoffs for the first time in 16 years, or whatever it was. Next year, literally plays the entire season with a torn ligament in his shoulder, and it's just shit on incessantly by everybody in Cleveland, to the point where, they celebrate sex pest Deshaun Watson being given $230 million guaranteed.
Ton of money.
For not having played for 2 years. And when Watson finished his fucking suspension last year, he looked like hammered dog shit, right? He did not look good. And I've watched some of these summer practices, and he's developed rapport with one wide receiver, and it's not Amari Cooper. Okay? And Stefanski has already said we're pivoting away from a run-heavy offense. You arguably have the best running back in the NFL in Nick Chubb.
Pretty much.
And you are going to pivot away from a guy who averages over 5 yards a carry, who is a punishing runner but has amazing speed, to make sure Deshaun Watson can air it out almost 40 times a game when he showed that he couldn't do it last year. You're going to force a square peg or a round peg into a square hole when your team is built to run, especially when your defense isn't that great. Run the ball, keep the other team's offense off the field. Let Watson fucking pick and choose, 25 passes a game. But, Stefanski is the next coming of, offense Jesus. So obviously he knows far more than I do about what his team's capabilities
Maybe he's seeing something that you don't see.
Yeah, he's playing at a 40 chest there, Jason. Like
there's again, back to the commodification of people, to the point where it's like you're just a value number, and that's how the fan base looks at you as well. What's interesting to me about that is there was a time when it was like, all right, Baker Mayfield's a quarterback, they're not going to draft another quarterback, and now that's done. If you drafted a guy, Arizona, all right, Josh Rosen, number 2 pick overall, you look pretty good at UCLA. Let's see what you can do in the
1
pros.
year.
You got 1 year with a very, very bad news Bears-esque team.
Oh, yeah.
Poor Steve Wilkes. And you get shipped off the next year because you guys bring in a new coach. He's like, I want my guy. I don't want Josh Rosen. I want what is his name? I love that kid.
Kyler Murray. And now keep in mind, fucking old Cliff Kingsbury never got center. He was shipped out before the start of spring practice.
Before he even got there.
Yep.
And Josh Rosen has never, I don't care what anyone says, has never gotten a shot in the NFL. I don't know what he is. At this point, I'm sure he's just a mental nightmare.
Oh, dude. I think what I loved about his Twitter, the Browns had him on the roster, not last season, the season before. And his banner on Twitter was him in a Browns uniform. His profile picture was him in a Niners uniform. And his bio said QB Miami Dolphins. So, like, I don't even think at that point he gave a shit. Like, I just think he was like, you know what, man, I've been passed around like a blunt at a fucking Snoop show, and I'm over it, right? And I commend him because, like, he hasn't popped up on like social media or any kind of media. He's just like, all right, man. He got paid to be a backup. Hopefully he was smart with that fucking money. And I hope he's enjoying life. But you're absolutely right. He never got a shot.
Never got a shot.
But you look at guys like Jeff George, who got multiple shots in the league with 5 different franchises, who, yeah, he could throw a ball 90 yards kneeling. Couldn't hit a slant, though. You know?
First overall pick, wasn't he? Or was he the second overall pick?
He was first overall pick.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to think that dude was just hell on every coaching staff, in every locker room. He thought he was the second coming of fucking Johnny Unitas when he was average at best, because you know what he couldn't do? Couldn't read a defense. Could not read a fucking defense. Couldn't hit a slant. His whole thing was, I'm going to sit here. You guys are going to hold your blocks, and I'm going to huck it, chuck it. And you got to remember his first, you know who his running back was? Eric fucking Dickerson.
Yeah, the trade, the big blockbuster trade, Dickerson to the Colts. Yeah.
And he wasn't the same Eric Dickerson, right? But he was still 1,300 yards a year.
He was still quality running back. I can't break that 80-yard run on your ass, but I can still break, 5 15-yard runs on your ass.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't understand how dickheads like, oh, JB, I would even venture to say his release was 7 seconds. He would continue to drop back in a pocket where he's 20 yards off the line of scrimmage and then throw the ball 60 fucking yards.
You remember who his OC was? Remember who his OC was? Does anyone remember who his OC was? Anyone?
In Indy?
Anyone?
In Indy?
Anyone? June Jones.
That's right, yeah.
Couldn't stand each other. June Jones wanted to implement like a more run and shoot style. Jeff George was a nightmare for every team he went to. And I think he end his career in Oakland, or was it LA at the time? I don't remember. I think it was Oakland.
I think it was LA. They hadn't made the move back to Oakland yet. Or maybe they did. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I look at these quarterbacks that had what's the guy's name? Carson Wentz. Comes out of North Dakota State. Does he go number 1 over Jared Goff?
Championship winning in college. But this is what killed me about him. Played in a very run-heavy offense. North Dakota State was a very run-heavy offense.
But he balled out before he blew his leg out. Was it his leg he blew out, right?
Yeah, it was a lower leg injury. And I just think he was one of those guys that needed to be put in the right situation with the right coordinator, with a great QB coach, right? And this is what we're missing with a ton of these young quarterbacks, is a lot of offensive coordinators like to wear both hats, QB coach, OC. You can't fucking do that. What you need is that QB coach who sits down with that young quarterback after, like, say, an interception, or he gets sacked and fumbles the ball, or he misses a read, or he didn't step up in the pocket when like your tackle misses a block, right? You need to walk him through that. He needs somebody he can just bounce that idea off of. It's okay to have running backs coaches, right? Wide receiver coaches, defensive backfield coaches. But why do offensive coordinators? And I think it goes down to like a horrible level of ego to think, you know what? I'm calling the plays.
Yeah.
Therefore, I know what's best for this kid. And no, you don't. No, you fucking don't. Your job is to call plays. You got wideout coaches, you got running back coaches, you got O-line coaches. Let somebody coach your quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You know? And why the fuck do so many of these offensive coordinators just don't do that? And it affects these young QBs. Like Rosen didn't have a QB coach under Wilkes. Didn't have one. And that poor kid, I think he started 3 games that year at the end of the season.
He was demolished.
Just pummeled. Just
4 for 11. Just getting demolished.
Yes.
Dude was. I know we're not the biggest fans of. God, I can't think of his name. He was at Oregon.
Mariota,
the coach.
Oh fuck!
This is killing me.
I can
chubby round white guy.
Chip Kelly.
Chip Kelly. But Chip Kelly's offense. Remember, Nick Foles, 7 touchdowns in 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
In Chip Kelly's system. Josh Rosen looked very good in Chip Kelly's system. This young kid coming out of UCLA, I don't think he came out this year.
Robinson, right?
DTR. Is that the kid's name? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Love his game. He's a little raw, but I love his game.
Oh.
Can he play without a Chip Kelly system? I don't know. Like, when you take these kids from some of these systems, it's like, is Wilkes an old school coach that goes, no, I'm not catering anything to what you do. You will learn how we do it here, which is old school football.
It's dumb football. I think Bill Belichick learned that the hard way last year by bringing in a special teams coach and a defensive coordinator to be co-offensive coordinators with a kid who's in his 2nd year in the league. Like, come on, you big fucking dummy. And I'm a Pats fan. You are supposed to be the guy that is just night and day better than every one of your 31 peers in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And Belichick showed his ass last year by thinking Matt Patricia and Joe fucking Judge could call offensive plays when they've never done it in their life. They've never coached an offensive position in their life. I think Joe Judge spent like a year as a wide receivers coach.
Wow.
1 year.
Wow.
And he puts them in charge of an offense with a 2nd year QB. Like, what the fuck? I felt so bad for Mac Jones. And keep in mind, I didn't want Mac Jones. I wanted Justin Fields. I wanted Fields so bad because
I think they had their black experiment with
Cam
with Cam Newton. And you know what? Now that he's out of football, I am becoming such a huge Cam Newton fan. Like, I rooted for him his rookie year, but
Jason, I have a Cam Newton Pats jersey.
I want Cam Newton to win, man. He just seems like a decent human.
I know. And the thing is, I still wait to piss off all the massholes that are down here that are like, you know what? I fucking love the Pats. I fucking love them. But that fucking Cam Newton, nah, man, nah. And I'm like, say it. Go ahead and say it.
Call him the
it's on the tip of your tongue. I can see it. Just say it. And they're like, nah, man.
Nigga, what?
Yeah. You know?
Like,
so I fucking I wear
large.
my Cam jersey just to piss them off. And right. I wanted him to be successful there. But he played under Josh McDaniels, who didn't know shit about working with a mobile QB. Didn't know shit. And let's face it, at this point, the former cannon that was attached to Cam Newton's right shoulder was gone because he's had 2 shoulder surgeries. Dude took a beating in Carolina. You know, and honestly, like, I would have implemented an offense that was 2 tight end heavy, right? And you still had Edelman there, right? So you don't make Edelman the focus, but he's your primary target, okay? And after your first read, you just dump it off to the tailbacks or the fucking tight ends. And is it flashy? Absolutely not. But
can Cam do something with that if there's nothing there? Probably. Still, he can do enough.
Oh yeah,
that man is so large. I stood next to him at Coachella one year. I didn't realize it, and people were like, "Oh, dude, did you talk to Cam?" Because they had been like hanging out with him in the VIP, like the crew I was working with.
Sid, you have to remember too, Cam. Yeah. Sid, remember Cam played for Gene Chizik at Auburn, not Tommy Tuberville. Tuberville was in Cincinnati at that point. But he played for Chizik on that national title year. Because you remember that he spent 2 years at junior college before transferring to Auburn after the whole laptop fiasco.
I watched him in the summer game. The summer game when he was at Florida, when he was Tebow's backup.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know who this Newton kid is, but goddamn.
Yeah.
He's giving Tebow a run for his money.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I hate him. The fact of the matter was a system quarterback that benefited greatly from when Urban Meyer actually was a dynamic play caller, unlike his last 3 years in fucking at Ohio State, where it was just like QB draw, JT Barrett go. QB draw, JT Barrett go. QB draw. Oh no, JT Barrett got hurt. And then Cardale Jones comes in.
Cardale Jones.
You see Cardale come in those last 4 games that season, and the offense is totally different. Totally different. You got a guy who can get the ball fucking more than 10 yards down the field, so that made the defensive backs play off their man, and it opened up huge holes for Zeke. It allowed the defensive linemen to get to the next level and block linebackers. And then what happens? JT comes back from that broken ankle, and Urban's like, I'm going to stick with my man. JT Barrett, he's been a starter for 2 years, and we're going to keep going. Quarterback draw, JT Barrett. And it's just like, Jesus fucking, and every Ohio State fan's like, well, JT Barrett set every record. He played there 4 fucking years. He should have. Okay. Ohio State quarterbacks don't do that anymore. Like Dwayne Haskins, I felt horrible for how he goes to a horrible situation in Washington, but ends up in Pittsburgh with a guy who's ridiculously supportive. Ben Roethlisberger's at the end. Dwayne would have gotten a chance to start, if he hadn't passed.
I wanted the Broncos to get him so bad.
That would have been a fucking 10 times better situation than going to Washington in that shit show.
I think that ruined that poor kid's life, and it was all downhill from there.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when your chain's only this long, and you make one mistake and you're pulled immediately.
I hate that.
And it's just, if you have a young quarterback, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have turnovers. You're going to have all this. And the thing is, you have to game plan for that. And that's what a good coach does. And I'm sorry, Rivera, not a good head coach. Totally average. You look at some of the teams he had in Carolina, that fucker should have had at least 3 Super Bowls. And dude could barely make out of the first round. And then when he did get to the Super Bowl, his plan was so bad. So fucking bad. That fucking Bronco defense just pinned their ears back and just gone. I couldn't believe how Von Miller and Wolf just manhandled the left side of that offensive line.
They destroyed Cam. He was never the same after that Super Bowl.
No.
He was never the same after that Super Bowl.
No, he wasn't. And that's the thing. Oh, Dr. Claw, I don't buy that. I can't see over the O-line shit because Drew Brees did it for almost 20 years. What you have to do is scheme for that. Play a lot of shotgun and open up the pass, the blocking lanes. You take a wide split, right? And that meaning you have, instead of the normal 2 inches you have between offensive linemen, you have about 3. That means your offensive linemen are going to have to control their man a lot more for a little bit longer. But dude,
Joe Montana's only 6 feet.
Yeah. That's all you have to do. Widen splits. All right. And make sure your offensive linemen are trained, one, to hold blocks and then do it right, keeping your hands within the shoulders. That way you don't have, holding calls. But yeah, man, Newton was never the same after that. And I honestly think just because he's so physically intimidating, because he is such a big dude.
He is a massive man. My goodness.
Yes. And he ran for his life the entire Super Bowl, man.
Got beat so bad in that Super Bowl. Do you remember after the game, because people always go, Cam Newton's a crybaby. It's like no one likes getting their ass kicked.
No.
Like you said, that shit about, hey, I may win the fight if I get hit in the face, but I'm not recovering.
I'm gonna be
the same way.
Bed for 2 days. I'm gonna be in bed for 2 days, man.
He got repeatedly hit in the face, the testicles, the
man,
neck.
I can't imagine. And when you're not even just talking about like shit like that, right? But just the sacks. These weren't like him getting pulled down because Von Miller rolled away. Von is just hitting him nipples to hips every fucking time. Wolf is just taking him shoulder blades to waist, from the opposite side. Like, I mean, they were bringing safeties in, Jason.
That's back when you could have a safety that's an extra linebacker, and they had that in what is his name? He's retired now. He went to Oregon. He's a beast.
Dude. Yeah, and it's just like Newton took such a drubbing in that game, and everybody's like, look at this. Like, you're absolutely right. They're like, man, look at this crybaby. Yeah. Like, he just lost a Super Bowl by like 30 fucking points. He spent the entire game running for his life, and a man that size was made to look like 3 inches big.
Von Miller is not larger than Cam Newton.
No,
because also, who else was at Coachella all those years? Von Miller.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Von Miller still runs around at like fucking 6% body fat, and he has some of the largest legs I've ever seen on a human being.
Touch with Von Miller and get bruises all over
my
arm.
No.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not trying to do anything with Von. I'm not accepting a beer from him because I feel like he's gonna like break my hand.
Hey, real talk. Von Miller, very nice with his drink tickets. Von Miller was a very nice man.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you right now. After like listening to his podcast and watching like the show he does, where like he brings a lot of awareness to like what fringe NFL players go through, just trying to make a team and all that shit. Like, this guy was a superstar in college. He was drafted in the first round. He's been a superstar his entire career, and he still looks out for guys at the lower end of the roster, right? He's just a genuinely good dude. And when you look at it, he likes to go out and have a good time. You know what he's not doing, though? Like the Plaxico Burress, bringing a gun into a club and shooting himself in the leg, right? He's not being abusive to wait staff. He's not a dude that's like, I'm here. I had a good time. It's time for me to go. I'm going to take care of the people that took care of me while I was here. And he's just a genuinely good dude. And I think I really like that kind of change in a lot of athletes. Like, they deal with shithead fans so much better than they did when I was a kid.
Like, I think because they're constantly connected to these people in a way that fandoms weren't before with social media, right?
Like, one of my favorite rugby players, a guy named Ronan O'Gara, and he played for Munster. And he was born in San Diego, but his family were diplomats, like at the consulate, the Irish consulate in San Diego. So he got to, like, he played in Ireland. He's an Irish citizen. And he was just out with like his wife and his kid. And this was at the beginning of like him becoming a huge superstar in rugby. And he ends up punching a dude, right? Just right in the fucking face, man. And like, Ireland's a small country. Every newspaper is just like losing its mind, you know, like just brah. And you know, Ronan O'Gara was like, I was literally just sitting down with my newborn kid and my wife trying to enjoy like a meal. And this fucker wouldn't leave me alone, you know, like badgering me for an autograph. He had a camera, so he wants to take a picture. And he's like, hey, man, can you wait until after I finish my meal? You know, and he just wouldn't go. He's like, so I did what I thought was right. You know, like. And can you imagine that shit now? Fuck, dude.
Oh, you're gonna get in so much trouble, dude. Remember when Marshawn Lynch slapped a woman because she wouldn't stop like yelling at him in a club?
Oh God, I mean, it's just, you know, you're gonna get canceled. Like, and the thing is, I had agreed with Ronan O'Gara at that point. Like,
Russell Wilson, Mac. Everybody hates him because he's corny. The fuck does that mean?
I think it has more to do with him like having a fucking smoking hot wife. Anything, you know, like, I honestly think, especially coming from a dude, like, they're just angry and jealous that his fucking mini me ass fucking roped in Ciara. Like, I'm a little bit jealous about it, but you know,
he seems like a decent human.
Yeah,
he seems to enjoy his family. If that's what being corny is, I'm like the corniest dude in the world.
fuck
I
yeah,
love
dude.
being
Like,
a dad.
oh my god, he likes being a dad and hanging out with his wife and taking trips with his family. Oh no, that's
what a
bad.
shitty guy. What are you doing? Having fun with your kid? Oh, what a piece of shit.
You know what? I really wish, you know what? You're right. That's horribly corny, and I wish he would break into people's house and steal painkillers like Ryan Leaf. That makes me cool.
Does it feel? I will ask 2 questions before we close. To you in the chat, I want to know this, chat. Does it feel a little racist when people say that Russell Wilson is corny? Because I've never given a shit what John Elway said after a game. I don't know what he said in the huddle. I think all those dudes that I grew up watching that I loved probably were corny and kind of dumb. I just don't care. And for a guy like Russell Wilson, he seems awkward. He definitely, I think the whole rapper wife thing, is awkward for him because he's not cool in any traditional sense of what people want to see their black athletes doing, I guess. But it does, to me, speak to something that people need to see. And it feels a little offensive. People like, he's so corny. It's like, well, what is that? What does he need to do for you to think he's fucking cool? And why do you give a shit what kind of man he is as far as like the coolness factor? Do you need to have a fucking leather jacket and be the Fonz for you?
Yeah. I mean, I live in North Carolina, and I was down here when he was going to NC State, and he also played baseball for the Asheville Tourists, right? Like, he played single A ball down there. Mm-hmm. And that dude, like, that's a godly man. Like, and I'm not saying that to make fun of him, even though I don't believe in any sky daddy, and I don't give a lot of credit to anybody or any faith that believes in a sky daddy. But the fact of the matter is some people don't weaponize it and throw it in my face, right? Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson was never that guy. He was just like, God bless me with the talent, and I'm out here to try and, make NC State as best as I can. And you got to think, he's playing quarterback in North Carolina as a black dude. He fucking took it on the chin, man. There's a lot of racist motherfuckers down here, right?
Phillip Rivers. The guy that came before him.
Yeah, So he transfers to Wisconsin, and in my head, I'm like, that's a ballsy fucking move, dude. Because, like, North Carolina's racist, fucking Wisconsin, up around that university, a lot of just shitty people up there, right? Mm-hmm. So I really think he dealt with a lot of bullshit from fans. I really do. And I think it is tied to racism. And, like, even to this day, even though we are seeing more and more quarterbacks of color, I still think there are enough of these old fucking fans that believe Chuck Bednarik is the greatest NFL player because he used to play defensive tackle and safety, and he played with a broken leg, defensive tackle and center, excuse me. And, I those people are still out there. That kind of fan base is still out there, right? And yeah, it was weird, like, for me as the outsider to see this guy who super godly, and not like in an overbearing way, which I appreciated about him, because I don't want to hear like, God make me a winner and you're a loser because God hates you. And he's just like, no, I just, like, God gave me a gift. I'm here to, like, make my team better. I want to win games for NC State and Wisconsin, and I'm going to do it with the support of my teammates. JB, yes, he is a weird dude. I'm not disputing that, but that's not, we're not talking about his weirdness right now, right? But when he gets together with Ciara, and this is a woman who, like,
I like it when you want to step.
Yeah, and she was hip hop royalty there for a little bit, and she's got like yes, Bad Lefty, this is James Conley. But she's kind of got like this kind of like ambiance of that hip hop culture, right? Yeah. And then she hooks up with Russell Wilson after leaving her. Who was her old man before that?
Future.
Yes, Future, right?
And Russell Wilson's taking care of the kids.
Yes, right? So you're like, he's going to try so hard, and he really did for a little bit, right? To like be as cool as she was. And then she kind of stepped away from like making music and doing anything. You know, she's just like doing mom shit, which that's cool as fuck, man. Right? Like, I love being dad. So if I could just stay home and hang out with my fucking kids, bitch, I'm there. Right?
It's hilarious. Yeah, I find the Russell Wilson conversations about how corny and people don't like him. Maybe they don't. I don't know. All I know is the whole corny shit. It offends me because I'm like, what does he have to be for you to drop that bullshit? What do you need him to do? Does he have to walk in like Shaft every time he goes to the fucking line of scrimmage?
If you want to talk shit about him, talk shit about what he did on the field, or like the bullshit he pulled with the front office before he got when he's sliding into Denver. Like, I need my own office. Why?
Yeah.
Montana didn't even have his own office. And I hate to tell you this, Russell Wilson, you're not Joe fucking Montana. You're not John Elway.
All that is fair. Those are fair criticisms. But the whole he's just corny shit. It's like, dude, stop thinking that everybody colored has to be the vanguard of cool.
Bro. Yes, one of my favorite like leftists that I genuinely like lean into their opinion because it's very nuanced, it's very thoughtful, it's very broken down, so everybody can understand it. Is the nerdiest black dude I've ever seen in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just the nerdiest dude. He's got anime everywhere, and there's comic books on the shelves behind him, and he goes on hour-long screeds about how the MCU is losing fans because they're putting out bad films now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and then he intersperses this with the most nuanced and just amazing critiques of American leftism now. But like, he's maybe 120 pounds. He's like, like my wrist is a bigger around than he is, you know? And it's like, you know, it's all right to be nerdy, man. It's who gives a fuck? Like, I'm a nerd. People look at me like, look at that fucking beard and tattoos. Like, there's no way he's a nerd. I'm a fucking nerd, dude.
We've been nerding out for 3 hours.
No shit. And on top of that, like you already pointed out, if being corny is hanging out with your fucking kids and like watching a movie, or like I play Fortnite with my fucking kids, fuck yeah, I'm corny as shit too. Dude. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just love being a dad.
You don't want to see me in dad mode with the 4-year-old. It's not. It's not. Whatever you think I am, it is not that. 2 things you don't want to see me, like in a relationship or like playing with my children. I'm pretty fucking boring.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's like, I'm with you. Like, what does this man have to do?
Yeah.
Again, critique him on the field, critique him with what he, like the shit he pulled with the front office. That's fine. But you can't critique him. You can't critique him on being a dad, or being a husband, or being active with his family, because those are things that obviously mean a fucking lot to him, and he should be commended for
his
that.
blended family, because she came into the relationship with luggage.
No, my brother.
Yes, she did.
You know, and like you said, like, that's what kind of killed me. Like, Future's like, I really want to be a dad, and he like disappears for 9 months, and then shows up like, yeah, man, that's my kid. And you just see like Russell Wilson like running around with the baby and like throwing a football and like taking him, like they're swimming in the pool in the backyard, like. And then Future's like, yeah, man, I'd do that if you let me see him. And it's like, and then CR comes out like, you don't want to see him. And then all this is playing out on Instagram and shit, and you're just like,
oh, he was damn, like, dude. You want to see a kid?
No, my brother.
Oh my God. Right? And honestly, if you're gonna critique somebody, if you're gonna like be that kind of fucker, right, that just critiques him for like being a family man, why aren't you critiquing the so-called cool one who went after the really, you know, the corny guy?
You know why?
You know,
because she got tired of the fucking cool guy, because that shit does not pay off. Then she was like,
no, my brother.
CR, I got #1 album.
No, my brother.
I'm looking for a real man.
my God. And the thing is, it's like when you look at like Courtney or no, the other one, not Kim, not Courtney, but the fucking OJ's
Crystal.
kid. OJ's kid.
Amaranth.
Yeah, she's got like 2 kids with Tristan Thompson, and he cheated on her both times. Shit, and she still like lets him come over and hang out at the house, and he's got another kid.
You know why, Mac? You know why? Because she was like this.
I came here for 2 things: to suck some hard candy and suck some dicks.
And I'm all out of hard candy.
And she was like, Tristan, I'm pregnant.
No, my brother.
Oh my God. Listen, before we go, we have to discuss.
Like, Tristan, do you have a condom? And he was like, I totally have a condom. She's like, are you putting it on? I'm totally putting it on. And then she's like, I don't think you have a condom on. And then this conversation happened.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Oh my God. Maybe that's what the Armenians are down for. They're down for Tristan Thompson. We might have just solved the mystery. What the Armenians
are down.
Oh my God. And we still have to find that other poor woman who was accused of having her dog shit all over her.
Who gets to shit all over me? That bitch Caitlin.
No, my brother.
Well, she originally and asked him to do that, and that's what he said. He said no, and then she hit Vladimir up, and he was like, "Yes, I do this." And then it got really weird, you know.
Dude, I cut a whole clip. I did this whole bit about telling a joke wrong, and then my friend not getting the joke, and I thought it was so great, and I played it back, and I was like, Tucson goes, "Don't post that on."
Really?
It was a champagne room bit.
Oh man, dude.
And this is free champagne for everybody. We've definitely gone over. This is if Mac and I had a terrestrial radio sports show, this is what it would be.
Oh, it would
just constantly getting FCC bombs. Like, you got to stop saying the N-word and the Fs.
Can you imagine our producers just behind the glass, just like, God damn.
The producers behind the glass, like E.T., like watching their career fade away. They're just watching their career.
Owner of the station's like banging on the door, but he can't get in, and he's just like, "Let me in the pocket." And we're just like, "What? I can't."
Like, can't hear you. We're like, nigga, what?
After 3 hours of talking,
Mac, I fucking dude. We actually worked some of this shit will work out, and this was a true story, and we're riffing on it, and I told a joke to a friend, and this was the joke, but I told it wrong the first time, so I told my friend the joke. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I told the joke. I was like, "What's the difference between your mom and 3 dicks?" And I was like, "Wait a minute." I was like, that's not the joke.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, okay, sorry. So I fixed it and I go, wait, the joke is, what's the difference between 3 dicks and a joke? And she goes, what's the difference? I was like, your mom can't take a joke. Right? And she was like, I don't get it. And then I had to mime it to her basically for her to get it. I had to mime her mom and dicks. But we were laughing so hard, and we had a guest on that night. And the guest was like, this is the last thing I see before I go to sleep. And that was like where I made the cut of the thing, right? And then we went on this whole riff about like that's how you should quit your job. Like you should go to your boss and tell the joke wrong. Like, what's the difference between your mom and 3 dicks? I don't know. I quit. And he just like, kick
just
over
flash the deuces and fucking like kick the trash can on your way out. You know,
and I was like, this is the best clip ever. And Tucson is like, I don't think you should put that.
I mean, in all fairness, Toussaint is the voice of reason in this entire group.
She is. And she goes like this is what she said. This is what she says. She goes, I know you really want to.
I'm not gonna lie, I wish you would have.
And I'm like, Toussaint, I have it queued up. I just have to press upload. And she's like,
oh my gosh.
I think it wouldn't be a good idea considering we just did this Cornel West show.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, maybe you're right.
Well, like, I told all my buddies, like, I was like, yo, man, like Jason and Pascal are gonna have Cornel West on.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all like, are you fucking kidding? And I'm like, no. And they go, one, who the fuck are Jason Miles? Pascal think they are. That they can have candidate for president on their show. And I'm like, yo, like, you guys obviously don't know who Jason is. And I was like, you really don't know who the fuck Pascal is. Because Pascal's got some clout, man. Pascal's got clout. Like, the man is one of those, like, I'm like, it takes me a second to fucking center myself so I can say something to him where I don't feel like a fucking idiot every time we do a show together, because I just respect his opinion and what he has to say so fucking much, and he's so smart, and I'm just like, I still laugh at dick and fart jokes, you know, like
we all do, dude.
Right? All do. So, you know, I let him know. I was like, yeah, like they're doing this interview, and it's gonna be like on the YouTube channel. Like, you just gotta fucking watch it, because you know they're you know, I formed a little reading group to help train, you know, baby leftists and help them kind of decipher everything, and you know. So they were interested. We're like, well, we haven't really voted before, and we're thinking about voting for Cornel West. And I was like, well, there are worse things you could do with your life. So yeah, definitely watch it, right? So they watch it, and they're like, wow, that Pascal guy. And I'm like, gee, will you just Google him and stop? Like,
he had known Cornel West. They had met a few times before and had interactions with each other. And you know, again, Pascal, I will not say everything that Pascal says off air, because he is. Everybody on this show is really funny. He plays the straight man, you know. He plays the straight man.
Yeah, you know, and I was just like, just Google Pascal, please. Google him, and you could like read his writings and all the other shit he's done. And they're like, well, what about Jason? I'm like, ooh. I was like, Jason's smart too, but Jason also like laughs at dick
and must tell one to every guest.
Yes, every one of them, you know. And they were just like, well, how does he run a channel that has such serious things like this? And then, like, I guess the one person was scrolling and they saw like kayfabe and like all this other stuff. Like, how is that? How are they so? How can I have so serious of an interview, but talk about wrestling? Oh, and you're on there talking. Oh my gosh, sports. And I was like, listen, man. Again, we're allowed to have
if
fun.
You're not,
we're allowed
having fun. The best compliment I ever got, I was a guest on a show called The Popular Show, and one of the guys is a columnist in Sublation, James, and the other guy used to be a producer on Michael Brooks' show.
Rest in peace, man. I love Michael Brooks. Love Michael Brooks.
And they go, when they bring me on, the first thing they say is, every time we see you guys on air, you're always having fun, and people want to be where the fun is. And because we've been on for so long now, I'm just being stupid and being way too honest. So it's a problem to a certain degree, because, you know, we're black dudes that do this shit, and we're supposed to be a certain way for people to be able to digest what we do. And we cover a lot of different topics. We don't just, it's not like we're black, y'all. We're black, y'all. Like it's just obvious. Everything I do is going to be a black thing, right? I can't stop that. But I also like to have fun because shit sucks. I live damn near 1,000 miles away from everybody that I know and love. I live alone in a country where I don't really speak the language.
It's called Duolingo, Jason.
It doesn't work like you think. It
I know. I know.
And there's a lot. Everybody's got shit to be sad about, right? Like everybody's got shit to be depressed about or whatever. So it's like I don't have time to be depressing. Like we talk about depressing shit every day. I woke up in the morning and just read depressing shit, and I have to think about how can I make this depressing shit more depressing. Because I think that the world sucks even more than this person, and how can I make this even more depressing? And if you're not trying to make what you do seem interesting and fun, then what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, and again, like you said, shit is bad. Like it just sucks. And we're actively trying to make things better. And it's hard, especially when you're in our orbit where you have municipal, state, federal level government actively fighting you on trying to improve things in your community, right? It's okay to just fucking unplug, come on a show like this, make dick and fart jokes. Talk about the comparisons between Russell Westbrook and Russell Wilson and Future. Like we are allowed to do that. And it's good to do that. It is good to do that. It is good to just put the literature away, take your activist hat off for a little bit and just like play some fucking Fortnite with your kids or make jokes. And just genuinely enjoy yourself because we get one crack at life. This is all we got, right? Unless the Buddhists are correct and reincarnation is a thing.
I don't know if I can
my
do
luck
this over.
My luck is so bad, I'm going to be reincarnated as something awful, like a veal calf or something. Like that's just how bad my luck is, But like I'm going to sit here and enjoy myself and the comrades I've made along the way, and we'll sit here and try and figure this shit out, hopefully before the world gets set on fire by increasing temperatures or drowned due to the melting polar ice cap. So either one.
Don't say that because I live by the water. So listen, can you hear that, Matt? Can you hear the music? Now I'm doing something that we do in the champagne room because I want you guys to understand why we have fun in the champagne room. I get to play DJ in the champagne room because those shows don't get monetized. This show that we've been doing for 3 hours and 34 minutes, I'm about to throw it all away. Because JB said, and it's good, JB, he said, Jason, play some Stevie Wonder because you got me all in my feelings where I want to feel sad but have a little bit of hope. And if that's, JB, what gets you in that mood, that's what gets me in that mood as well. It is important that we remember how important our friends are. I got to spend some time with some friends I hadn't seen in a while. I got to hang out with Ben. I got to take Ben Burgess to a black barbershop.
Oh goodness, how'd that go?
It was fine. It was a comedy show in there, but he had brown liquor. Him and Jordan got to have brown liquor in the black barbershop. Jordan yelled at celebrities in the secret back room of the comedy store. We had a superstar ass good time. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and say fuck it. I'm gonna burn it all. Get this notice from YouTube that this show can't be monetized. Hopefully they don't pull it down. The audio will definitely be available. Mac, Aaron Rodgers, does he win a Super Bowl in New York?
Nope.
Does he go the Brett Favre route?
No, I think because of that restructured deal, he's fucking locked in to New York for at least this season and next season. But with the amount of money that was deferred, because this season he was supposed to be owed over $101 million.
Jesus Christ.
So he restructured his contract and it backed more of that money off to the end. He's not going to be a free agent again. So if he moves, it's going to have to be through trade, and whatever team takes him is going to have to accept $100 million plus salary cap hit. And no team is going to fucking take that. No team, especially a 40-year-old QB who has shown diminishing results the last few years as far as like yards the ball's traveled, completion percentage, shit like that. And honestly, I like Robert Saleh as a head coach. Mm-hmm. I just don't think this is the year he gets everything together to do it.
Even with some of the acquisitions they made and some of the young guys they picked up.
I think it's a good team. I think it's a really good team, man. I just think that with Buffalo there, and even though they've retooled a bit, that's a rough out in the AFC, right? I'm never going to count Baltimore out. I think Lamar Jackson can do amazing things on a football field, and with that defense and giving him people to throw to, Baltimore's going to be even better. You know, when you look at Miami, if they can keep Tua upright, there's not a lot of teams that have the weapons Miami has. You know, I can see the Jets pulling out a wild card easily. Okay, I think the NFC East or the AFC East will be a lot like the AFC North was a couple years ago, where they had 3 teams in the playoffs. But you know, you have all that plus Cincy, who is an amazing fucking team, and they only got better on defense. I think Cincy's in a very small window right now to win a Super Bowl because all those young players are going to be coming up for new contracts in the next year or two. So, you know, they got to cash in like right fuck. But the AFC is going to be rough. And then on top of that, you've got the Chiefs, right? Say what you want.
Can't count out Mahomes. I love to count out Mahomes. You just can't.
No. And he loses Tyreek Hill, and what's he do? Wins the Super Bowl? Well, you know, like he does great things with the people that he has, and his ability to just get the ball downfield, extend a play. Like it's something else, man. So I don't see the Jets being able to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. And if the Dolphins are completely healthy, you know, fingers crossed, I don't want to see Tua's career end because of traumatic brain injury. You know, but like a healthy Miami, I don't see the Jets like getting past them. There's just too many weapons on that offense. And with McDonald there, he can scheme anybody's defense. He really can. He can scheme anybody's defense. You know, and on top of that, look at the NFC, man. San Francisco constantly, even with the quarterback turnover, amazing team, right? You know, there's just too many good teams out there right now that I think to expect a revamped team like the Jets to gel in one off season and come out firing on all cylinders. I think those expectations are too high.
That's a very sober take. That's a very sober analysis of the current state of football. I think we should clip that and send it to Emma Vigeland. We'll just clip it and call it Emma's message. Oh, we can't because I got music playing on it. Oh, that sucks. Yeah. Maybe I could track it out. I'll see if I could track it out, and I'll clip it. We'll call it a message to Emma. Since she's
I mean, dude.
Jets fan.
I mean, the thing is,
Giants fan.
She's a Giants fan, and the thing is, I worry about her Giants because Saquon's going to come back and play on that franchise tag. I don't think he re-ups with the Giants though after this.
No.
You know, he's kind of leading the charge to make sure running backs are going to get paid, which we've seen running back pay just drop precipitously since the adoption of more spread like tendencies.
Oh yeah, once yeah. I'm not even gonna look. That's a whole nother show, and we lasted for 3 shows.
Yeah, it's because this is what we do, man. You and I go on and on and on and laugh and giggle about inappropriate things while making great points.
I'm going to turn the music up. Thank you guys for watching. Mac may be coming back with me if he's free on Saturday to do this episode about Ireland.
Oh, I might just have to not go to work, dude.
I can't do that because if you can't come knocking on my door and be like, "Hey, Jay, I need a place to stay." It's like, look, man, you can't.
No, my brother. You got to buy your own.
Now, it'd be one thing if I just showed up with a bag, but I'm coming with like 16 tough boxes full of books, and you're like,
yeah, and then your badass kids come with your ass too. Oh hell no, I can't have you. The native kids too. Oh hell no, there's too many minorities in one place. I can't deal with it.
Oh man.
So yes, I am sabotaging my own show because we want to end on a good note. Show you guys how we end on the champagne room. You guys like what we do, become a patron, drop a super chat, subscribe to the channel, tell a goddamn friend. And we are out.